The character reflected on how unjust the world could be. The child standing before them was nothing more than a youngster. A young child was beginning their journey into the study of magic. He appeared as if someone had taken advantage of him. The event occurred as part of an experiment conducted by someone. The aristocrats belonging to the magic tower. Following 7 long years filled with hopelessness, he manages to surpass his boundaries by drawing energy from the heart of the tower. The character rises to surpass all boundaries as a mage. The tale opens with the image of a magnificent tower rising high into the clouds. A pained groan reverberated from within the darkness. A short time after, someone with a stern tone demanded that the subject regain his composure, reminding him that their ordeal was far from over, and insisting that losing consciousness was not an option. At that moment, a new dose of stimulant entered the body, causing a powerful scream to erupt. The same voice observed that the phenomenon had continued for exactly 461 seconds, and remarked that the present area was showing encouraging outcomes. Blood covered the test subject's body as they fought for each breath, and an observer remarked on how this experimental talent truly set them apart. Inside the Bohemian magic tower, he was kept in chains as the others around him rejoiced over their achievement. The stimulant had triggered the magic circle and successfully halted any resistance. His vision blurred, he glanced about, realizing he stood within the Empire's mightiest tower. Despite his struggle, he felt as if his life was gradually slipping away. Amidst the array of scientific instruments, he wondered about the purpose behind them all. He stared at the container filled with ants, questioning how a once great intellect could find himself reduced to this situation. One of the amplifiers shifted, and a voice announced that it was time for Hood to take action. In that moment, the stimulant surged through his body, contorting his face with intense agony. Agonizing pain overwhelmed him as he silently begged for mercy, even as the presence of purple energy fixed a cold, unwavering gaze upon him. His hands stained with blood and marked by chains, he pleaded with intense desperation. The tower master grumbled about the commotion, insisting that a summary be provided once the experiment finished. In response, a subordinate quickly confirmed that the request would be fulfilled. Hanging in the air and injured, the captive struggled to catch each breath. He wondered why his life was ending in the very spot he had always imagined himself. A firm hand seized his face, insisting that he regain his composure. A man taunted, questioning his well-being and insisting that lacked genuine magical skill, suggesting instead that merely prided himself on his wit. Weller revealed that the hidden laboratory was draining both the boy's energy and his memories. He encouraged the boy to behave as he used to, suggesting he speak with the same intelligence he once showed. A different observer commented that, given his current condition, even losing consciousness was likely beyond his ability. At the same time, another person inquired whether he was able to hear any sounds. Undeterred, Welder continued with his task. They questioned whether he could hear them and wondered about the direction of his gaze. At that moment, he realized the experimental ants had escaped, prompting him to reprimand his subordinates for not keeping them secure, while they responded with awkward apologies. Annoyed, he muttered harsh words under his breath, insulting their intelligence, and brought his foot down with a forceful stomp. He regarded as nothing more than a bug, someone so weak that escaping even one shackle would be impossible without the aid of magic, which, in his mind, made an ideal subject for study at their current level. Not long after, it became known that Huwa's companion had gained approval to travel overseas for his studies by entering the tower. Those around them began to ridicule for associating with someone like. As confusion filled the room, questioned the reason behind the turmoil, his eyes falling on the lifeless ant pressed against the ground. He managed a strained smile as the full reality of the situation dawned on him. When the researchers noticed what was happening, they burst into laughter, while the young man struggled to find his words. Weller turned to him, curious about the quiet words the young man was attempting to say. His anger erupted as he raised his voice, blaming himself for the events unfolding and believing his own shortcomings were at fault. 15 years ago, his streak of bad luck had started. Growing up in an orphanage, he longed to become a powerful mage. Though he managed to join the tower, it was only as a regular laborer, and his hopes of mastering magic always remained out of reach. His potential was capped at rank I, which meant his abilities could only develop so far. When he turned 7, he underwent a magical compatibility test that showed he had no aptitude whatsoever, instantly crushing any hope he had of achieving his dream. Despite the challenges he faced, Vernon remained determined, driven by his singular desire to become a mage. While carrying out his duties in the tower, he would often sneak glances at hoping to unlock their secrets. He spent countless hours poring over books in the library, relying on his sharp mind to compensate for his lack of strong magical abilities. Several years passed, and as his exceptional talent was at last acknowledged, he secured a role as a researcher within the magic tower. A co-worker admired his abilities, claiming he surpassed even the standards set by the legendary master. At that moment, he understood that his intelligence went beyond mere talent, it bordered on genuine brilliance. He expressed his gratitude too, mentioning that he had to verify the thesis before sharing it, yet an unexplainable uncertainty caused him to pause. He wondered aloud whether Lucerne had ever revealed this to anyone else, and learned that he was, in fact, the sole person entrusted with it, recognized uniquely by his closest friend. Believed he was on the verge of transforming into a genuine master of magic, ready to abandon his former life as just an ordinary laborer. Before long, he insisted the thesis belonged to him, explaining that it had vanished just one day prior to when he was supposed to present it. Planned to present the work as his own. Known as the Tower Master, inquired whether the young man before him was responsible for developing the theory of multi-dimensional continuity, noting to himself that an achievement of that magnitude could not simply be overlooked. Vern, his words faltering, attempted to seek reassurance, assuring that he would clarify all the details from the start. His superior, meanwhile, appeared taken aback by the unexpected news. He discovered, to his astonishment, that the ordinary researchers were completely unaware of his existence. He felt a sharp pang of regret for visiting the master that day. His lips curled into a wicked grin as he instructed the man to appear at the laboratory in 2 days, timing the meeting for when the moon would disappear from the sky. At that instant, questioned whether choosing differently in the past could have given him an ordinary life during the next 7 years. He found himself trapped inside the Tower Master's laboratory, where the Tower Master mocked his refusal to cooperate and threatened to make the experiments even harsher. During the daylight hours, he toiled as a laborer, but once night fell, he transformed into an experimental subject. He received instructions to draw magic circles and to prove the accuracy of his own theory. He injected various substances directly into his veins, carefully watching how his body responded. Through these experiments, he aimed to create new potions and demonstrate how effective they could be. In addition, he had no choice but to devote his whole existence to the tower, enduring immense hardship every step of the way. He understood that sharing what he knew would only bring disbelief, and instead of support, he was met with menacing warnings directed at the people he cared about. Tears streamed down his face as blood stained his skin, and he felt certain that it was all over. Lying alone in his cell, he wondered if there was anything left for him to try. In a memory from the past, a younger could be seen having fun with, who shouted with urgency as pleaded for his friend to stay. He recalled a moment when a mage had addressed him as worker, and he had immediately replied. Not long afterward, extended an invitation to him, proposing that they strive to become powerful mages side by side and sealing their pact with a heartfelt promise. He reflected on how events might have unfolded differently, as recollections of the vow he once made merged with images of the tower in his mind. Had his ability to improve been even slightly higher, his fate might have taken another path. As the recollection slipped away, he glanced again at his hands, now marked with streaks of his own blood. Without warning, he found himself once more inside the prison cell, his wide eyes fixed anxiously on the cold metal bars. An unseen figure threw an object onto the floor before him, demanding with a commanding tone that he confess to everything. Blood soaked his body as he realized that everything was about to end. Suddenly, the floor of the cell became visible beneath him, alive with a mass of crawling ants. Once more, caught the familiar noise that always accompanied the experiments. He believed that his strength had left him, and the idea of dying started to seem like a preferable choice. As he glanced downward, he noticed a flattened ant that drew his focus, just as a mysterious voice questioned his feelings and assured him that things were far from finished. The ants gathered together, forming a shadowy cluster that brought thoughts of revenge and the struggle to stay alive to his mind, while the same question echoed once again. His entire body shook as an inner voice urged him to keep going, clench his jaw, and persevere through every challenge no matter how many times they came. He would be given a new life, destined never to be oppressed again, and would possess an extraordinary strength. A mysterious individual, draped in a cloak and facing away from him, stood in front of a radiant magic circle, while a voice assured him that he was destined to break through his boundaries. He tightened his grip and gave a quiet nod of agreement. Gazing out the window at the moon, he realized that things were far from finished. For 7 long years, he had been preparing his weapon of revenge, relentlessly refining it until it reached perfection. He considered whether finding a solution to the final lingering issue might alter everything. Confronted by a force stronger than his own, he came to understand that relying solely on his intellect would no longer suffice. He resolved to confront destiny directly, transforming existing theories and inventing a groundbreaking approach to rebuilding the human body. With his hands stained in blood, he set into motion a theory that challenged the very laws of the universe. The magic circle on the ground emitted a soft, radiant light, hinting that an important event was bound to unfold the following day. Despite his injuries, radiated determination, vowing inwardly that he would surpass his boundaries the next day. Intense energy radiated from his hand, signifying that he had fully mastered the process of body reconstruction by accepting death. At the same time, as he knelt on the cold floor of the cell, he realized that the only thing left to do was to confirm if his theory was correct. He realized that, even if it meant destroying his monolith body, he required a magical artifact to perform a single spell. His eyes filled with determination as he resolved to regain his freedom the next night. As darkness retreated, the first light of morning spilled across the magic tower, signaling the arrival of the day when his carefully crafted scheme would come to life. Just then, someone turned a key in the lock. The door swung open, and someone instructed him to tidy up the alchemy laboratory. Weller showed up, ridiculing his state and insisting that everything be perfectly clean before the festival began. His face, marked by fresh bruises, remained wordless and simply gazed ahead. At last, he gave his consent and began moving toward the brightness waiting beyond the cell door. Inside a laboratory, he started wiping surfaces, using a cloth and a container to assist in the cleaning process. A few moments passed before he spun around in surprise, reacting to the unexpected question about whether he was handling the cleaning by himself. Stood there, her face brightening with a smile as her gaze landed on him, while he stared back in utter disbelief at the sight of her. He inquired about her presence, prompting the young woman to explain that she was there to bid farewell to a friend before leaving. He smiled as he recalled that she had earned the rare honor of studying in Viant, the magical city reserved only for the most gifted individuals. He offered his good wishes to her, and she watched him closely, her expression thoughtful. Reached out her hand, gesturing for him to join her on the journey too. She told him that in that place, he would be free from prideful attitudes and might discover fresh possibilities. Feeling a flush of embarrassment, she confessed that her true desire was simply to have someone to talk to. In response, he gently spoke her name. He stayed where he was, a subtle smile appearing on his face. She glanced his way, her face clearly showing disappointment. As the carriage rolled away from the tower, she gave her word that she would keep in touch through letters. Back inside the cell, he gazed out the window, his thoughts swirling with the realization that she remained completely unaware. He couldn't shake the belief that had no idea about the real events that had unfolded there. He dwelled on how she overlooked his pain, but his thoughts were interrupted when someone called out, urgently demanding that he come at once. Despite being restrained by chains, he felt a sense of relief and gratitude that she had remained uninvolved in his scheme. The Magic Festival, held in honor of the tower's completion and the wonders of magic, transformed the area into the liveliest and most crowded place around. As the event unfolded, he made his way along the corridor, fully aware that the only people left in that area were mages of lesser rank. Before long, someone rapped on the door, and a voice from inside granted him permission to come in. When the administrator noticed him, curiosity prompted a question about his purpose there, and explained that he was assigned to tidy up the treasure vaults. Still grumbling, the man muttered that he should have requested permission first, and insulted him by calling him a pathetic fool. Despite his concerns, he permitted him to come inside, cautioning him to be careful and not break anything. An immediate response of agreement followed. The door swung wide, unveiling the hidden chamber filled with treasures. He let his fingers glide gently across an unfamiliar surface. His fingers landed on a mystical object, and narrowing his eyes in concentration, he triggered its power to ensure complete silence. He moved down the softly illuminated spiral staircase, announcing that this was the moment his plan would start. As he moved downward, the sound of his footsteps bounced off the walls, filling the space with rhythmic echoes. At last, he arrived where he had intended to go. A glowing staff and an enchanted circle stood ready for his arrival. The second circuit stood out as an unusual object, possessing the extraordinary ability to unleash 3 spells at once and unlock hidden abilities. He announced his intention to use the staff for his scheme, explaining that disabling the protective magic circle was necessary for his success. He disclosed that the spell was a 7th-level incantation, uniquely crafted by the Tower Master himself. His hand reached out, glowing with power, as he confirmed that 7 years of his life had been devoted to mastering the art of breaking that barrier. A brilliant burst of light erupted, causing the magic circle to break apart completely. Shortly afterward, he lifted the staff high and announced his intention to be the one to bring about its destruction. In another part of the tower, empty liquor bottles lay strewn about while an unseen individual muttered a string of curses under their breath. During the festival, 2 mages complained quietly, feeling unfortunate that they had been chosen to watch over the source of power. Bearded thought he was handling the situation with grace, convinced that his abilities made him the rightful choice. At that moment, an unexpected visitor arrived. The bearded mage, seizing what he felt was an ideal opportunity, commanded the newcomer to bring additional drinks. The second mage commented that after achieving the position of Tower Master, he would swear off that particular drink for good, causing his friend to burst out laughing. Holding the staff firmly, the newcomer's eyes radiated unwavering resolve. The bearded man's eyes sparkled with excitement as he eagerly embraced the opportunity to become Tower Master. Without warning, the second mage glanced around in astonishment, startled by the unexpected events unfolding nearby. He couldn't comprehend the situation, and insisted on finding out what was up to. Upon witnessing the staff being waved around, he reacted with intense anger, raising his voice at the young man. Taken by surprise, the young person paused, unsure how to respond to the sudden reaction. Annoyed, the mage seized his staff and warned that he would set the fool's mind straight. He unleashed a spell of the 3rd level, summoning a massive and intimidating tidal wave. As the spell surged in his direction, stood his ground, recognizing and respecting the force it carried. He reacted by summoning an earth spear to counter the oncoming magical attack. The mage with green hair stared in disbelief, while fragments of debris scattered in all directions. He collapsed onto the ground, his cries of agony echoing through the room. Still reeling from shock and injury, he wondered aloud how it was possible for a person with only a level 1 rank to use magic. The attacker moved closer, questioning whether the sight of a test subject using magic had taken him by surprise. Speaking with unwavering authority, he announced that such consequences awaited anyone who dared to meddle with individuals like himself or with the tower. In the heart of the rune, he remained upright and imposing as the 2 mages sprawled on the ground nearby, their bodies marked by fresh wounds and flowing blood. He raised his eyes and realized he had never been this near to the heart of the tower before. In front of him stood Pulse, the magical tower's energy core, looking uncannily like a beating heart. He explained that the journey to this moment had spanned 7 years, and despite having no idea of the consequences of failure, he planned to channel the source's mana to activate a technique known as defying the heavens. Intricate magic circles had been inked across his back, each one a testament to his careful planning. He held the staff with determination, fully aware that only by making an attempt could he uncover what might happen. He drove the artifact down into the very heart of the magic circle etched onto the floor. He stood in that spot, surrounded by a powerful force that tied him straight to the origin. At the same time, a crackling energy started to swirl around him as his body began to change. He raised his voice in rebellion, challenging the very skies above. A wave of blue energy burst around him, and the core of the tower throbbed in answer. A radiant blue glow spread out, casting light over everything in its path. A massive surge of energy shot out from the tower's peak, slicing straight through the sky above. Far off, a carriage rolled away, as magical energy crackled and flames engulfed the building. From a distance, a shadowy figure observed the strange occurrence, realizing that the power was originating from its center. Bessie stepped out from the darkness and announced that his magical tower had been breached by an intruder. The tower unleashed a massive burst of energy that swept through the outer area, filling the night under the moon with swirling smoke and scattered debris. Amidst the crumbling debris, a lone person let out a harsh cough and fought to push themselves up from the ground. Struggling through the thick haze, he gripped the staff tightly, gasping for air while the heavy smoke swirled around him. Energy particles seeped from his hand, as he wondered if the devastation ought to have erased all traces of existence. Despite his exhaustion, he dropped to his knees, relief washing over him as he understood that everything had worked as planned. Without warning, he raised his eyes and noticed a brilliant light speeding toward him through the darkness above. 3 glowing blue orbs streaked through the air in his direction, signaling the arrival of another presence. High above, encircled by swirling magic, the tower master known as made a striking entrance, instantly identified by everyone present. Suspended above the ground, he watched Ariel's anguish intently, silently wondering if the young man sensed what had happened to his protectors. He reached out, and a focused blue energy formed, swirling in tight circles around his fingertips. A focused surge of energy shot from his hand, slamming forcefully into the earth below. As the smoke began to dissipate, a shadowy figure gradually emerged, unmistakably the lone survivor. As made his way down the sturdy steps, his eyes swept over the scene, his face set with a mix of anger and resolve. He froze in surprise when he noticed a teleportation circle etched into the floor. Unable to tolerate the thought that someone had laid hands on his cherished tower, he clenched his jaw in frustration. He came to an abrupt halt, his figure shrouded in a vibrant purple glow, and loudly proclaimed that the identity of the intruder was of no real importance to him. He announced that, regardless of whether the offender was the emperor or just a young child, the person responsible would face severe consequences for the insult. Fueled by anger, he vowed to track down whoever was behind it and show them no mercy. An intense rage consumed him, causing ominous thunderclouds to gather above the tower as a violent lightning storm erupted in the sky. While the sun shone brightly in the clear sky above, a figure rested unmoving on the ground, completely drained of energy. He wished he could just stay where he was, but the noise of water flowing pulled him from his rest. Without warning, panic surged through him as he became aware that he was fully underwater, struggling to make sense of what was happening. He glanced about in confusion, struggling to grasp his new surroundings, his memory still filled with images of his desperate escape. As he gazed into the water, the sight of his own reflection startled him, leaving him overwhelmed with surprise. A look of disbelief crossed his features as his hand rose to his face, his mind struggling to grasp the transformation that had occurred. His hair, which had originally been brown, had faded to a shade of silvery gray, almost resembling polished silver. His formerly dark pupils had transformed, now shining brightly with a striking light blue color. He wondered if he had changed into a different person, his mind troubled by the possibility that the reconstruction had not gone as planned. At that moment, he recalled how, once his body transformation was finished, he had quickly vanished with teleportation magic, slipping away before had a chance to catch up to him. From this, he realized that the spell had transported him to a place he had never seen before. As he glanced at his surroundings, he noticed that the trees and vegetation were unlike anything he recognized, confirming that he had been taken to a distant place. A grin spread across his face as he understood that the spell had transported him safely over thousands of miles. He burst into laughter, unable to contain the happiness that flooded over him from both his escape and the completion of his transformation. Stretched out on the moist grass, he pictured rage building, frustrated and lost since the tower had fallen. Even as he felt a sense of satisfaction, he understood that simply reducing the place to ruins would not be enough to topple the magic tower. He understood that, famed for his limitless power, was sure to have backup plans in place and would quickly recover, even if his followers were defeated. He smiled with firm determination, vowing to become stronger even as his foe worked to restore all that had been lost. He lifted his hand toward the heavens, silently vowing to erase all remnants of the old master's work. His fist tightened as he resolved that his quest for revenge and his determination to prove himself as a mage would leave a mark on history. Though his lips remained silent, he inwardly said goodbye to the magic tower he once called home. Just then, a little goblin emerged from between the trees, swinging its axe at the wood in a haphazard manner. Now clothed, lifted his hand and unleashed the spell. A sharp blast of wind hit the goblin, making it yelp in shock before it fell to the ground. He examined the motionless figure lying on the ground, noticing how the grass around it was marked with patches of blood. Even after undergoing the transformation, he noticed that his strength remained unchanged. He realized that the reconstruction had not gone as planned, since both his mana and his physical form were different from what he had anticipated. Unaware of why things had gone wrong, he felt uneasy, particularly since there were no villages nearby. Not far ahead, he noticed marks imprinted in the dirt. Lowering himself to the ground, he studied the grooves made by a cart and the outline of an abandoned box. He moved his hand purposefully, channeling mana detection into the object, intent on discovering who it belonged to. A vibrant blue glow erupted from his palms, casting a shimmering path of magic that snaked its way through the dense forest. Far ahead, a wagon sped urgently down the road, its two horses galloping at full speed. The driver raised his voice, urging the animals to quicken their pace. Panic and confusion overwhelmed him, and he muttered curses as he struggled to control the situation. He remembered how they had been attacked unexpectedly by a group of bandits. He attempted to strike a deal, but his efforts were unsuccessful, and his mercenaries betrayed him without a second thought. The true horror for him had not been facing the bandits, but rather the sudden arrival of an orc, whose menacing grin filled him with fear. Through a fortunate twist of fate, the creature began to attack its former assailants instead, creating the perfect chance for him to get away. The wagon raced frantically along the road, driven by sheer desperation. Had the orc not been momentarily sidetracked, the man would have lost his life by now. A noise arose from behind, sending a chill down his spine as dread crept in at the thought of someone following him. In a rush of fear, he lashed the reins, desperately urging the horses to pick up speed. Without warning, one of the wagon's wheels hit a fallen log, causing the entire wagon to overturn. The man writhed on the ground, his body contorted in agony as his back struck the hard earth, causing him to cry out in pain. Despite his struggle, he managed to rise slowly, but stopped abruptly when he saw what was in front of him. Glowing eyes emerged from the dense, shadowy undergrowth, piercing the darkness with their eerie light. From the shadowy forest encircling him, creatures with blood-red eyes, orc and goblin alike, began to appear. Overcome with shock, he collapsed to the ground, struggling to accept that his life might end at the hands of these creatures. The creatures inched forward, their bodies tense and poised to attack. Overwhelmed by hopelessness, he surrendered to his fate and squeezed his eyes shut. Suddenly, a barrier of solid earth emerged, encircling him and blocking the monsters from reaching him. High above on the wall, his rescuer paused, suddenly aware that no space had been left for air to flow through. A particularly large orc bared its teeth in a menacing grin, the crimson glow of its eyes radiating with fierce energy. From his vantage point, quickly evaluated what was happening, fully aware that he needed to intervene before the man ran out of air. He concentrated his strength into his palms, summoning a blazing sphere of fire, fully conscious that this moment marked the beginning of his very first true fight. The orc let out an enraged roar as he confronted the towering wall of earth, his eyes burning with intense hatred. Vernon's lips curled into a frosty grin as he thrust his burning hands forward, anticipation gleaming in his eyes at the chance to unleash his newfound powers. Vernon released a torrent of fire, and the nearby trees were quickly swallowed by the raging flames. He unleashed a volley of blazing arrows, each one igniting upon impact and setting his foes ablaze. In the midst of the raging fire, a towering orc emerged, easily distinguishable from the surrounding goblins. The furious beast let out a deafening roar, while its companions collapsed one by one around it. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the archer who had been observing the scene from afar. As summoned several glowing magic circles in his palms, he himself to cast powerful spells of both fire and wind. He triggered dual casting, amplifying the force behind his strikes. Immediately after, multiple bursts of blazing arrows materialized one after another. The blow landed, sending the goblins crashing to the earth. The raging fire engulfed the foes, leaving nothing behind. After the blast, most were reduced to mere dust. At that instant, Vernon became aware that he was astonishing himself, since before this he would never have killed even one goblin. He took a moment to inhale deeply, after realizing that every monster had been defeated. He realized he had to move to safety before lost consciousness, knowing that his rescue would be meaningless if he failed to act quickly. Suddenly, an enormous beast appeared from the shadows behind them. He spun around suddenly, surprise flickering across his face as someone appeared where he hadn't expected anyone. At that moment, he realized that one of the creatures had survived, marking its path with a streak of blood. After a while had passed, the coachman guided his wagon back onto the road and continued traveling. Shared his deep admiration, recalling that the events of that day would remain unforgettable to him. He admitted that he wouldn't have made it on his own, and wondered aloud how he might show his gratitude. Warned him to focus on driving, reminding him that another distraction could cause the carriage to tip over once more. Gave a swift nod. Driven by curiosity, he inquired about whether the fight had been perilous. However, the other person felt that tended to be overly talkative. Despite his outward composure, he silently acknowledged to himself that the situation had, in fact, carried a certain level of risk. He spotted another surviving monster and himself to attack, a blue light beginning to gather in his palm. A sharp blast of wind suddenly tore through the air, slicing the creature's head cleanly in half. He offered a gentle smile, assuring everyone that there was no cause for concern. The coachman inquired whether bandits were known to frequent the area, and he received reassurance that no such troublemakers had ever been spotted there. As Vernon looked around, he came to understand that Baron Pathy held dominion over the forest. Comrade revealed that he was acquainted with the Baron, and assured everyone that the local bandit threat had already been eliminated. The traveler realized that this fortune had failed, as the teleportation had landed him squarely within the boundaries of territory. At that moment, he chose to hide who he truly was and focus on becoming more powerful, knowing that the magic tower could possibly be looking for him. Returning to the present moment, he became aware that he had forgotten to say who he was. With a friendly grin, Asher shared his name. He clarified that was reserved solely for moments, when he confronted the tower master. As the group traveled onward, the Baron's estate gradually appeared on the horizon. Later that evening, a startled man approached, seeking to understand what had occurred to him. Laughed and explained that he had slimmed down during his escapes from the orcs. The man inquired about his well-being, noting that he had been attacked by both bandits and wild animals. Responded by insisting that none of it had been his fault. The man realized that Asher was inquiring whether he was the mage responsible for rescuing his friend, and he explained that he could not simply stand by and do nothing in front of the person who had saved him. Without pausing to consider, he instructed Asher once more to return to the castle. The young mage expressed gratitude with a respectful bow, appreciating the gift of clothing, a meal, and shelter for the night. Baron Pace greeted him with a warm smile, his expression inviting and friendly. Proceeded to share his name and motioned for the other person to take a seat. As they ate, inquired whether the meal was to his guest's liking, and was met with a lively expression of praise. Not long after, he presented an offer of 5 million coins as gratitude for the assistance, yet mentioned that he required something significant in exchange. Speaking plainly, he presented a challenge and assured that anyone who completed it would receive a valuable prize. Remembering his financial struggles and desire to improve his skills, the mage became intrigued and inquired further about the details of the mission. Revealed that several bodies had been discovered, and he mentioned that a town close by was now nothing more than a devastated wasteland. He continued by explaining that the bandits were responsible for what had happened. There were no traces left at the scene, making it seem as though the perpetrators had disappeared into thin air. The Baron wondered aloud if one of those present might be a mage, while his visitor inquired about the starting time of the hunt. Maintained a serene expression, as he informed everyone that their journey would begin in 4 days. At that instant, a knight stepped forward and identified himself as Enoch, the leader in charge of the mission. Soon afterward, and the young introduced themselves and welcomed the new arrival. He replied with courtesy, expressing that meeting them was a genuine pleasure. Although the offer was out of the ordinary, he recognized its worth because it would provide for his accommodations, and the host assured him that there was no intention to take advantage of him. The mage, filled with curiosity, wondered if the rest of the group planned to participate in the mission as well, and soon learned from Enoch that everyone present was indeed an adventurer. The commander clarified that the group had come together after hearing unsettling rumors about an unusual orc. The promise of a generous reward drew the attention of experienced adventurers with gold-level status, all eager to join the hunt. The adventurers possessed the power to harness energy, and stories claimed they had the ability to cut through mountains. Asher strolled along, lost in contemplation, questioning his purpose in the group since there were already 3 seasoned knights accompanying them. At that instant, turned to him, seeking assistance to determine if one of their foes was actually a mage. This brought up a new question in his mind. What made him so important? The commander went on to clarify that mages of the 2nd level held power equal to that of knights, yet their ability to cast spells from a distance made them hard to confront directly. Right away, grew worried as he understood that this situation could turn into a major issue. At the same time, the mage shifted their attention away from the quiet woods surrounding them. He gestured toward the glowing magic circle in front of him and started getting ready to break its spell. Without warning, multiple crimson rings emerged as a reaction. The sudden surge of magic caught everyone off guard, leaving them puzzled about how such a phenomenon could take place inside the strictly regulated zone. He quietly clarified that what had been sensed was merely a disguise spell, and that the barrier served only as an alert. He requested that the others step back to ensure he could turn it off without danger. As he brought his hand down on the fresh red circle, a blue light surrounded his fingers. Enoch watched each motion with careful attention, filled with a sense of wonder. Internally, he marveled at the mage's effortless ability to dismantle intricate enchantments. Explorers belonged to various guilds and took on assignments that spanned the entire continent. Death was a constant companion for them, yet those with talent had the chance to gain riches and earn recognition. Some individuals, driven by overwhelming desire, eventually lost their way and became bandits, betraying their own people by raising their swords against them. A fugitive expressed his annoyance while standing in the forest next to his companion. They both expressed regret over the disorder that followed their previous raid and worried about the scarcity of food since the orcs had attacked. In the midst of the tense atmosphere, he reprimanded the group, insisting that they stop standing around and instead head out to hunt. At the same time, Enoch and a knight observed the scene from a distance, certain they had located their intended targets and simply waited for the command to proceed. The commander barely had time to propose launching an attack right away before someone cut him off. Speaking with authority, the mage clarified his purpose. He had been dispatched specifically to oppose other. He emphasized the importance of assessing their opponent thoroughly, warning that underestimating a more powerful foe might lead to their downfall. Despite his worries about what the bandits might do next, grew quiet and simply observed as his companion sat lost in thought. Not long after, the mage shared his own plan for handling the problem. While this was happening, the head of the escapees expressed his frustration over the loss of a team member. In turn, his companion encouraged him to think about a different approach. The bandit, filled with regret, remembered how a savage orc had destroyed his group. As he reflected on his past as an explorer, he realized his own greed had once driven him to take another life. In an attempt to break the stalemate, he proposed launching an assault on a different village. However, his companion refused, pointing out that the Baron had already been furious over the corpses displayed in the trees. He also cautioned them about how easily their concealment magic could fail, and pointed out how close City was. As they debated plans to attack the village, a sudden burst of energy tore through the atmosphere. Stared in disbelief as fire surrounded her from every direction. A tremendous surge of flames and brightness rushed over the entire scene. A glowing magic circle appeared beneath him, making it clear to the criminals that their presence had been detected through sorcery rather than by mere accident. The surge of magical energy swept through the confusion, hitting multiple individuals within the group. Amid the chaos, let out a cry of agony, gripping his staff tightly while blood streamed down his injured face. Startled by the commotion, the leader quickly hurried over and witnessed him falling to the ground, hurt and unable to stand. He realized right away that the mana barrier was fragile, and when it failed, it struck back harshly at the person who had created it. At that instant, the mage announced his intention to confront the adversary, but only after first assessing how powerful they were. The commander listened carefully to the words being spoken. Seething with anger, the bandit leader declared that the Baron intended to kill them because they had employed a mage. Fueled by determination, he silently vowed to stop the noble's schemes and charged forward with an intense assault. The sound of metal rang out as his sword struck Enix, the two blades meeting in a sudden, jarring impact. Fueled by intense anger, he made a vow to deliver their heads to the Baron as an act of vengeance. The knight responded to the threat with nothing more than laughter, clearly unfazed and even amused by the challenge. At the same time, attempted to escape, but his enemy blocked his path by summoning a wall of earth in front of him. Taken by surprise, Refugia understood that despite his adversary being just a second circle mage, the man was still capable of pursuing him without needing to take to the air. The pursuer wondered aloud about the reason for his lingering presence, observing as he a spell, summoning several arrows of ice. The enemy watched as the projectiles hit with force, convinced that such an attack would surely be fatal for a mage of only the second circle. Despite being surrounded by fire, the young himself to strike back, summoning several arrows made of flame. Within seconds, the spells launched by both sides crashed together with tremendous force, unleashing a powerful burst of mystical energy that erupted in a spectacular explosion. As the last traces of smoke drifted away, a massive crater became visible under the dim glow of the evening sky. His body battered and struggling for air, the adversary stared in disbelief, realizing with shock that he had underestimated the strength of his challenger. Despite facing unfavorable odds against the knight, he remained convinced that he could secure victory on his own and find a way to flee. The fire mage fixed a steely gaze on his opponent, making it unmistakably clear through his unwavering stance that escape would not be permitted. Confronted by the boy's unwavering resolve, the adversary couldn't help but recognize his remarkable abilities, expressing admiration for the boy's self-assurance and his impressive command of advanced magic despite his youth. His eyes blazed with fury as he believed the other person would never expect to lose at this very moment. He raised his voice and called upon the spell known as Falling Ice, causing enormous shards of ice to materialize in every direction around him. While massive chunks of ice slammed into the ground with force, his opponent stood unfazed, displaying complete composure. They observed with a steady, focused intensity. In that moment, an enormous cube made of pure energy materialized, effectively shielding everyone from the enemy's magical attack. The ice stood in shocked silence, unable to find any words. The situation baffled everyone, leaving them struggling to comprehend how it could even happen. Moments later, columns of earth erupted upward, colliding forcefully with the ice and breaking it apart into countless fragments. He stared in shock, slowly coming to the understanding that the young mage had somehow blocked his strongest magic. The mage lifted their arms, calling forth spears of earth that rose up and formed a protective ring around the battlefield. His hand began to glow with a vivid blue light, as he himself to deliver the decisive blow. Thorny branches ripped their way through the floating fragments of ice. The enemy stared in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how someone ranked as a second circle mage could possibly cast spells from the third circle. Upon witnessing the scene, he caught the sound of someone mocking him, challenging him to figure out how it could have happened. He realized he had been misled all along when he observed the four elemental forces in action. Exhausted and powerless, he fell to the floor, his eyes fixed on the victor who had overcome him. As daylight faded, the winner stood tall, his eyes fixed on the defeated figure lying motionless at his feet. He realized that his visit had proven valuable, as he had gained important insight into fighting mages. A small, contented smile crossed his face as he gazed downward, feeling pleased with himself. Once the intense battle ended, his eyes were drawn to an unexpected light. He noticed a creature wearing a pendant, its peculiar gemstone glowing brightly around its neck. A towering orc with an intimidating presence emerged from the sea of lifeless bodies and pools of blood that covered the war-torn ground. Just 48 hours prior to the journey, the character crafted a new potion from components found in the magic tower, choosing to call it the magic circuit dilator. Memories of his time in that place weighed heavily on his mind, making him pause before proceeding with new experiments on humans. Despite his reluctance, he still pressed forward and administered the green liquid. As the substance made contact, the room was suddenly filled with a deafening crash and a sharp, shrill scream that echoed off the walls. As a result, he advanced to the third level, demonstrating that the experiment had worked. At the same time, Asher hovered above the lifeless form of his adversary, contemplating ways to demonstrate the value of his efforts. Just then, something drew his gaze. He hurried over and spotted a wand on the ground, curiosity sparking as he considered whether it belonged to his rival. He proceeded to use a magical ability to examine the object's properties. The wand allowed him to cast spells more quickly and made his ice magic stronger, making it an ideal tool for the way he fought. Just then, rushed in, his face lighting up with relief when he saw that was unharmed. Despite the lengthy struggle with a more powerful foe, he felt content with how things had turned out and carefully examined the marks that remained from their clash. Shortly afterwards, Asher inquired about the status of the bandits and learned that only their leader was still fighting, locked in battle with. As they got ready to leave, the knight sought approval to voice a question. He proceeded to ask about the fate of the possessions left behind by those who had been vanquished. Filled with excitement, he shared that the leader had given permission for them to choose whatever items caught their attention, provided those things were not vital to the group's needs. Asher considered barren, and decided the wand would serve a valuable purpose if entrusted to him. Soon after, another knight approached and expressed gratitude to him for stopping additional harm. In response, he reflected that the situation had taught him an important lesson. At the same time, one of the tied-up bandits stared in disbelief, unable to accept the news that was dead, finding such an outcome unthinkable. A wave of hopelessness washed over him while he pictured himself dragged before the leader to face execution, an outcome he could not bring himself to accept. Because of this, he made up his mind to run away. While he came to this decision, Asher and the knight by his side simply observed in silence. The moment the prisoner sprang forward, he unleashed a fierce assault on one of the guards. Seething with anger, he demanded that they move aside. He realized that, lacking magic, there was no way for him to overcome the enemy's defenses, so he was left with just a single choice. Without hesitation, he vowed to slay a knight, take the man's horse, and escape by launching an attack against him. A heavy tension filled the air as he clutched the knife, his actions driven by a deep sense of desperation. At that very moment, Meg raised his sword and deflected the attack. The attacker stumbled back, clearly stunned that his scheme had been foiled with such speed. He found himself suddenly lifted off the ground, completely shocked by the unexpected turn of events. While he tumbled downward, he noticed his sword slipping from his grasp, only understanding after the fact that it was no longer in his hand. Within moments, he fell hard onto the ground and was quickly held down by 2 soldiers. Meanwhile, the knights chastised him for abandoning his weapon and lacking any sign of dignity. The warrior responded with a cold sneer, his expression filled with mockery toward the other's statement. He believed that pride belonged only to the living. After the incident, he expressed regret to his companion for having exposed him to such a disturbing sight. Enoch admitted that fighting in such a manner was unfamiliar to him and wished he had taken more time to act with caution. Meanwhile, Asher expressed admiration for how well his companion had done. The knight was questioned with curiosity about his decision to let the bandits go. In reply, he explained that he had recognized some of the faces within their group. He went on to clarify that the group could be survivors from a recent assault on the city, and that they would be escorted to the castle, where their identities would be before any decisions were made about their future. Just then, a soldier instructed the group to get ready for departure and begin relocating the prisoners. He grabbed one of the restrained men, who struggled with all his might against being taken. A second bandit, his hands bound, made a frantic attempt to escape, driven by the terror of dying, but he froze as a stern order halted him in his tracks. While they fought desperately, the soldier assured him that he would handle the situation. At that moment, Asher stepped in and urged everyone to pause, feeling that something was amiss. The bandit pleaded desperately for assistance, his voice filled with panic, as the 2 onlookers stood nearby, silently taking in his frantic appeals. Without warning, a crimson light surrounded the soldier, who looked around and wondered aloud if anyone else noticed the scent of blood in the air. As the group remained vigilant, an object began to coil its way in the direction of the guard. He automatically brought up his guard. Within seconds, a decapitated head tumbled along the earth, smearing a gruesome line of crimson in its wake. The group stared in disbelief at the unexpected sight, each person puzzled by what they were witnessing. A few among them guessed it might be an orc, though they struggled to accept the possibility. Asher pondered the idea, questioning in his mind if it was really an orc. He considered the possibility that earlier adventurers had failed to overcome the challenge. A shiver ran through him as he became aware of dozens of entities like the creature from before, making it clear they faced far more than a single opponent. He swiftly determined that the glowing figure was likely the commander of the monsters. Its appearance reminded him of an enemy he had encountered in the past. A massive figure stood there, its lips curved upward in a broad, mischievous smile. Judging by the creature's large size, he concluded that it must have gone through a process of evolution. The orcs charged forward, initiating their attack on the group. Wasted no time instructing the group to form up defensively, urging them to concentrate their efforts on the goblins before turning their attention to the main orc opponent. Without hesitation, he rushed at one of the monsters and landed a solid blow. The force struck him hard, sending waves of pain coursing through his body as he instinctively recoiled. Just then the orc lifted its massive foot, ready to stomp down and finish him off. Despite the threat, adventurers in the vicinity quickly launch a counterattack. They succeeded in forcing the creature to retreat. Despite the circumstances, seized the opportunity that had presented itself. He delivered a carefully aimed strike using his sword. With a determined gesture, he the blade, which resulted in heavy bleeding. Within moments, the orc collapsed onto the ground, prompting the group to start their withdrawal. Blood pooled beneath the creature as it twisted in agony, crimson trailing from both its mouth and chest. The creature reached out and grabbed a tiny goblin with its hands. The soldiers stood frozen in terror, witnessing the monstrous creature consume their smaller companion. A few moments passed before the creature ejected a bone stained with blood. The creature lifted itself once more, shrouded in an intimidating and sinister energy. At that moment, Enoch wondered if the orc had recovered by consuming one of its own kind. He observed the situation with a serious expression, realizing that no one would be able to depart from this place without conflict. Enoch called out urgently, rallying the group to get ready for a fight while the orc loomed over them in a threatening manner. The creature launched its sword with a sudden, rapid motion that caught everyone off guard. Sensed the sharp edge sweep alarmingly near his cheek. He successfully deflected the strike, yet he couldn't help but question the enemy's unusual choice to hurl their weapon in that particular manner. Upon the collision, the overwhelming power of the enemy's blow caused his sword to break apart, scattering fragments in every direction. Fragments of the shattered sword lay strewn at his feet. Several shards sliced across his face, carving deep gashes that bled profusely. Within seconds, let out a cry of agony, crimson lines marking his skin as blood flowed down his body. One of his friends, overcome with shock at what he saw, shouted his name in fear. As called out to him, monsters abruptly materialized beside him. Para himself to attack, confidently asserting his intention to land a hit. He launched his attack, only to be stunned as his sword became lodged in the beast's dense, unyielding muscles. He used every ounce of his strength to yank it loose, yet the object remained stubbornly stuck in place. The orb moved forward, its enormous hands reaching inward as if to trap everything within their grasp. Before the beast could deal a final blow, another force hit its face head-on, halting its assault. At that instant, Asher gestured for to approach, and several stones started to rise and float in the air around him. Parrot moved quickly to the man's side, relieved to find him alive, yet she realized and acknowledged that a different issue had now arisen. Tears welled up in his eyes as he wondered how he could keep fighting without his sword. Asher went on to clarify that since the orc had eaten the goblin, its ability to heal and withstand attacks had grown much stronger. Remembered the moment, he used every bit of his power in an attempt to slice through the creature's arm, realizing he had never encountered an orc with such immense strength. The thought crossed his mind that this being could be one of the legendary figures whispered about in stories. Asher immediately dismissed his idea, which only added to his confusion. Still taken aback, maintained that an orc with such power could not possibly be ordinary. Asher clarified that the creature could heal itself and grow stronger whenever it consumed something. The creature possessed the ability to control those who served it, sometimes pushing them to the brink of insanity. As its influence spread, more terrifying monsters emerged, making the danger even greater. The orc possessed such overwhelming strength that it outmatched even seasoned knights, setting it apart from all others of its species. In a sudden burst of violence, the creature sent one of the knights flying with a powerful blow. Despite the imminent threat, Asher simply smiled, confident that the creature's display was unimpressive and far from worthy of being called a formidable opponent. A mysterious figure, shrouded by a hood, emerged and began weaving spells in the air. It became clear that typical magic came with strict boundaries, and exceeding those boundaries would make the spells unravel and fail. However, one spell stood apart, unrestricted by boundaries: geographic manipulation. Asher himself to unleash the spell, magical energy swirling around his hands. As he moved his hands with practiced precision, a giant magic circle appeared beneath his feet. Surrounded by swirling dirt and flying debris, he remained unshaken at the eye of the storm, leaving the soldiers nearby in awe and disbelief. As the earth trembled beneath them, two of the group became overwhelmed with fear. Their voices rose in alarm as they desperately wondered if other creatures were close, their terror of dying clear in their frantic reactions. Auk attempted to reassure the group, encouraging everyone to stay where they were, and emphasizing that the strange occurrence was merely a result of Asher's magic. He found himself starting to doubt what was happening. Before long, the ground tore apart to reveal an enormous chasm teeming with a multitude of strange beings, as Enoch and his companions found themselves standing on an elevated platform above the chaos. The goblins lost their footing and fell headlong into the fresh pit that had just appeared. The massive beasts crashed to the earth, their bodies battered and their cries echoing with agony. The chief orc, badly injured, now writhed in anger at the base of the deep chasm. At the same time, Asher started to recite the words to unleash a mighty fire spell. Amidst the scorching blaze, one hand lifted defiantly. Within seconds, an immense pillar of flames plunged down from the sky. He cast the spell known as Flame Ball, a technique from the third layer of magic. Parrot watched with satisfaction as the enemies were engulfed in flames, his delight evident until someone rebuked him, reminding him to remain composed. Asher watched intently and pointed out that, although there was no boundary to how far geographic manipulation could spread, it was rarely used because it consumed a tremendous amount of mana for relatively little destructive effect. He let out a disappointed sigh, reflecting on how the outcome had not met what he had hoped for, even though he possessed plenty of mana to achieve something better. Without warning, a fierce battle erupted across the field, jolting Asher and his companions with shock. The chief orc, enveloped in a crimson aura and very much alive, emerged from the blaze with a crowd of goblins encircling him. Turned to Asher, seeking guidance on their next move after the orc proved resistant to the flames. Lost in contemplation, Asher prepared to unleash a new spell, uttering the word wave as he focused his energy. A deep blue glow gathered around his hands as a powerful wave of water swept over the orc and the goblins, completely overwhelming them. Called out to Asher, his voice urgent, while the mage raised his staff, eyes fixed with unwavering determination. Asher concentrated his energy, summoning several icy arrows and unleashing a chilling winter wind. Encircled by a ring of ice, he announced his intention to end the orc's life with a deadly chill. Countless frigid arrows shot through the air, their icy tips tearing into the heart of the main structure. Not long after, the goblins nearby became encased in ice, completely immobilized. Although the cold assaults raged on, the orcs pressed forward with relentless aggression toward Asher, who stood firm within his icy barrier. Asher observed that, regardless of the creature's ability to heal or withstand pain, it would become motionless the moment its body was frozen. He swiftly moved to the side, narrowly avoiding the orc's attack as it charged at him, its sharp teeth and bright eyes flashing with a menacing smile. In Asher's grasp, a vivid blue sphere of light throbbed gently. A colossal sphere of ice burst from his hands, colliding squarely with the orc's chest. The creature stood frozen, trapped inside a solid block of ice. Asher announced with confidence that their triumph was now absolute. The focus moved to the grand and enchanting city of Vyant, renowned for its magical splendor. On a quiet balcony, two young men engaged in a peaceful conversation. One of them turned to his companion and inquired whether he was aware of the latest news. The other person agreed. Warren brought up the topic of the magic tower's sealed state and mentioned rumors about its energy source exploding. The other individual expressed doubt, wondering aloud if information like that could really be believed. The vanishing of both the mages and their towers, along with the sudden halt in their usual routines, hinted at a catastrophe much worse than a simple energy mishap, an event so severe that one of them confessed he hadn't experienced anything like it in many years. The mustache man paid close attention as those around him debated whether the recent events signaled punishment from the gods or a carefully arranged catastrophe. He felt a sense of satisfaction, seeing that their suspicions had been validated. At the same time, he pondered the mysterious communications coming from the tower, aware that the sealing of the magic tower had been the work of a deliberate hand. The man with the mustache quietly confided his belief that the tower would remain unsealed, thinking that its hidden experiments had made it a target for attack. Without warning, he knocked over his coffee, his hands trembling as a result of the startling grip moments before. A group of people grabbed hold of him, insisting that he say his words again. Puzzled by their actions, he questioned what was going on. The woman, her red hair now visible after lowering her hood, faced the group and demanded to know what had occurred. Wearing a grave expression, she questioned him once more, determined to uncover the fate of the Boomer Magic Tower. The crowd erupted with happiness as they welcomed back the subjugation squad, relieved and excited by their safe return. Once the mission ended, the ruling lord welcomed everyone to his land with a grand feast in their honor. As everyone received praise for their achievements, someone made an honorable comment about Asher's absence, noting that he was nowhere to be seen. Soon afterwards, he noticed the other person across the hallway, a friendly smile appearing on his face. Just then, the mage drew near and wondered aloud whether his arrival had come after the appointed time. In response, the host assured him that he was right on schedule. He had shown up at just the right moment, and someone handed him a glass of wine. Following a word of thanks, the newcomer remarked on how unexpected it was to find ordinary soldiers attending the banquet. The noble, however, made it clear that titles and positions held no importance that night. With those words, the conversation moved to another subject. The host inquired if the bandits had been manageable, and this was promptly affirmed. The mage thought back on the situation and remarked inwardly that, given their remarkable talent, the criminals had the potential to pursue more honorable lives. The other person nodded in agreement, remarking that his assistant's ongoing investigation could provide more insight into the situation. Shortly after, the subordinate disclosed that their opponents were not only criminals, but had once held the prestigious status of gold-rank adventurers. After one member took the life of a companion, the rest of the group decided to stick together, eventually turning into a gang of bandits. After reviewing the report, Asher realized the reason behind the unusually large bounty. The level of danger they posed made the reward completely reasonable. Upon understanding why Pithy appeared so content, he recognized that his involvement had prevented what could have been significant losses. Without warning, he became aware of the unusual way the host was looking at him and questioned the reason behind the intense stare. The noble expressed his pride in Asher, noting that Asher's victories extended beyond just overcoming the bandits to also defeating the demi-humans. He swiftly regained his composure, attributing his unexpected burst of excitement to the effects of the wine. He proceeded to share that, because of the mage's efforts, the villagers had been saved and the memory of those lost had been respected. He raised his glass high, honoring the hero whose bravery had rescued his homeland. The entire crowd in the hall lifted their drinks high, celebrating with enthusiasm the person who had brought them triumph. The mood at the banquet felt completely different from the one typically found inside the magic tower. Everyone came together and rejoiced as one, their celebration marked by a shared sense of harmony. In contrast to the tower's chilly and arrogant atmosphere, this place felt truly inviting. Because of this, felt profoundly touched by the kindness shown by those around him. After so long on the run, he finally found himself drawn into the festivities by the enthusiasm of a lively new friend. Thanks to this, he was able to offer a genuine smile as he shared in the happiness of those around him. At the same time, no one was aware of the disaster that would soon unfold with the downfall of the magic tower. Lady remained skeptical about the circulating rumors, since she noticed that the buildings appeared undamaged. She acknowledged her return from Vorant and felt a wave of relief at the sight before her. She asked where it could be found, causing the person she questioned to pause uncertainly. He simply gestured in the direction of the far-off group, signaling the location of the young man. As she drew nearer, the woman noticed a display that showed the names of those who had disappeared. Her expression grew solemn as she gazed at the list, struggling to accept the reality of what was written there. As she gazed at the countless images of mages, disbelief filled her mind, making her question their reality. As she continued to read, she firmly convinced herself that everything had simply been a terrible misunderstanding. Her gaze remained locked onto the image of a single, specific individual. Vernon's report announced that he had disappeared in the energy chamber. In that moment, she recalled when he had received praise for earning the opportunity to study in another country. She remembered how they had spoken earnestly with each other right after that moment. That day informed her of his final choice to stay within the tower. Understood that moment marked the final time she would ever lay eyes on him. Overwhelmed by the agony of her loss, she buried her face in her hands, unable to hide her sorrow. Despair quickly shifted to anger within her, as she could not bring herself to accept that they were apart. While she remembered how much his friendship had meant to her, a surge of magical energy burst from within her. Without warning, a steady voice declared that things should stop, while someone gently placed a hand on her head. Lifting her gaze, she spotted Sir, and her voice trembling with emotion, cried out to him. Tears streaked her face as she struggled to steady herself, yearning to know the truth about what had occurred at the magic tower. The Magd revealed that, during the festival, the energy source had spiraled out of control and annihilated every mage present. Furthermore, extensive research spanning years had vanished, and the vault's magical seal had suffered significant harm. Consequently, every item that had been kept there, from treasured books to priceless artifacts, vanished amidst the overwhelming devastation. Went on to explain that, above all, there was another loss that weighed on him even more deeply. Experimental Subject 77 potentially regained the memories that had been previously wiped from the records. Despite everything, he remained resolute, believing that they still had a chance to seek revenge now that they had uncovered a clue about the perpetrator. Quickly inquired about the knight's statement, prompting the knight to clarify that a person had vanished prior to the event. Making use of the tower's resources, he uncovered information about the person and revealed his findings to her. As soon as she received the object, she immediately understood that it represented the mark of the dark hour. She felt a wave of confusion because the object was connected to an organization determined to control the world by using magic. Confessed his uncertainty about how the infiltration had occurred, yet he confidently affirmed to her that they were responsible for the catastrophe. In his determination to seek justice for the fallen, he declared the creation of a special squad dedicated to their cause and extended an invitation for her to join their ranks. She tightened her fist, a powerful glow of energy radiating from her as she reacted. He looked at her face and realized from her resolute gaze that her mind was firmly set. Several days passed, and within the Adventurers' Guild located in Pega's territory, a man expressed his gratitude to Asher for his patience. He expressed regret to Sir Asher regarding what had happened recently. He recounted how gold-ranked adventurers had been dispatched, yet their mission had ended in complete failure. To Asher, the situation appeared to be nothing but a mere accident of chance. Feeling a sense of relief at being understood, the guild master expressed gratitude to him and presented him with a certificate as a reward. As Asher reviewed the document, he noticed that the original sum of $24 million would shrink to $12 million once taxes were taken out. The man clarified that a 50% tax was imposed on non-affiliates by imperial law, making it impossible to dodge. Despite the obstacle, he explained that a lawful solution existed. Asher promptly realized that the implied option was to pursue the path of an adventurer. The master nodded with excitement and clarified that, because of this unique situation, he was allowed to begin at the silver rank right away. Asher was urged to put his name on the registration, but he refused, thinking to himself that there were things more valuable than money. A subtle smile crossed his lips as he accepted the certificate, but his thoughts remained fixed on becoming powerful enough to seek retribution. Despite enduring 7 years as an experimental subject within the magic tower, he never lost the true spirit of a mage. Now, as someone who studied mysteries, he found himself inside the Adventurers' Guild storage room located in the lands of. At that moment, he disclosed that he was carrying the remains of the variant he had overcome. He had done everything just to examine the creature thoroughly. As he investigated the lifeless body, he would. The Guild's possession of an artifact that could keep anything it protected perfectly intact came as an unexpected revelation. Despite everything, the overwhelming odor made it almost impossible to breathe, as the corpse had deteriorated far beyond a manageable state. As he examined the orc, he observed that its red pupils and reddish skin were fairly typical traits. Unlike others of its species, the creature was easily distinguished by its ripped mouth and towering, intimidating build. Based on his observations, he determined that these characteristics pointed to a mutation rather than an advancement into a higher form of life. The issue continued to weigh on his mind, leaving him with the sense that his analysis remained unfinished. Mutation by itself failed to account for the beast's ability to heal, or the incredible power it possessed. Without warning, he noticed something he had missed before. He quickly realized that the creature had a noticeable scar. He realized that, Unlike the orc's usual ability to recover from even the most severe burns, this particular injury remained unhealed. The creature appeared to have developed its power to heal after obtaining that particular scar. He determined that the mark had been created by a cut intended to bestow abilities upon a demi-human. The realization left him deeply disturbed, as force evolution was the sole means known to accomplish this. He realized that the variant must have been made on purpose by someone, which represented the most troubling possibility. Several days later, when it was time to say goodbye, assured everyone that accompanying him any farther was unnecessary. The mage responded that rescuing him was simply the minimum he could offer. Despite everything, Asher believed he had already been well compensated, as he gestured toward the enchanted gear he now possessed. Insisted that the equipment was simply a just prize he had earned. Asher offered his gratitude with a genuine smile. The traveler left and silently hoped for his well-being. Shortly after, called out, encouraging Asher to mention his name at any guild branch, assuring him that he would not be disappointed by the results. Once the goodbyes had ended, the mage summoned a spell of flight, lifting off and gliding swiftly above the treetops of the forest. He seemed to have reached a small settlement located at the edge of Peggy's lands, right where they met the barony of Martus. After dismissing the spell, he touched down quietly on a street within the village. After examining the map, he realized this was the sole village located between the city and the barony. He purchased a piece of fruit and determined that spending the night in this place would fit well with his plans. Despite his initial anticipation, his expression shifted to a frown as soon as he tasted it, quickly sensing that something about it was not quite right. As he caught fragments of a conversation nearby, he realized a chance to learn something useful and chose to pay closer attention. With the help of the spell Whisper of the Wind, he learned that what troubled the villagers most was the threat posed by goblins. A villager expressed his frustration, explaining that the monsters had taken their animals, which meant the people now had to spend a great deal of money to hire adventurers for help. Someone else attempted to soothe his agitation, as Asher quietly questioned in his mind the reason for goblins appearing in this area. They had started out as minor thieves, but when they gathered in large numbers, they were capable of overwhelming and raiding whole villages. Realizing that calling for adventurers was the common answer, he flung the remaining fruit away, his face showing clear contempt. Before long, the topic of discussion changed to whispers of a creature lurking in the woods, which made him even more curious. Despite the village chief's command to remain quiet, a single man made up his mind to share the story. He started his story by explaining that only a few days ago, a hunter had ventured into the woods to inspect his traps, following his normal routine. At that moment, a boar's piercing scream caught his attention, making him spin around to discover the source of the commotion. He came upon a goblin whose gaping, ragged mouth stretched wider than that of any orc, hungrily tearing into the animal's flesh. While the anxious villagers argued among themselves, the mage silently ended his enchantment by snapping his fingers. As he processed the surprising news, his mind wandered to the goblin with the jagged mouth. He finished his thoughts with a slight smile, convinced that such an event was unlikely to be just chance. He shifted his attention to the distant mountains, having made up his mind about where he would go next. A shimmering spear, charged with magical energy, streaked swiftly between the trees of the forest. The creature fixes its gaze right on the goblin scout's eye. The monster's form crashed onto the earth, its weight shaking the ground as a pair of adventurers hid quietly among the thick undergrowth, witnessing the scene unfold. Proudly shared her progress with Toke after landing the strike. He chastised her for boasting about defeating someone so unchallenging, reminding her that their mission was not yet complete. Not long after, Iris, who led the group, turned to their scout Mild, wanting to know if he had discovered any evidence of goblins nearby. Mild gestured toward a cave close by, suggesting that it was likely where the creatures were hiding. As they examined the area more carefully, they spotted bone totems that signaled the territory of Hob Outlands, a place ruled by an advanced species. With that decision, Iris instructed her group to remove all the totems and warning signs before they went inside, a move that gained her the approval of her companions. she proceeded to use magic, improving her companion's ability to see. Was amazed when she discovered that she could suddenly see clearly despite the darkness surrounding her. Iris assured everyone that they could proceed without torches, and her dependable leadership quickly drew words of approval from the group. Once they were ready, the group of adventurers moved forward, heading toward the mouth of the cave. Without warning, the leader came to an abrupt stop, leaving puzzled as she questioned the reason for the sudden pause. Although Iris claimed it was nothing, she could sense a subtle trace of mana in the air and kept herself alert. Far off, the quiet forest concealed the existence of an unknown observer. At the same time, the sound of leaves shifting in the bushes exposed the truth that they had been under observation the entire time. Within the shadowy depths of the cave, a dim glow revealed the way further inside. In front of them, several goblins gathered in a circle, carrying out a mysterious ceremony beside a flickering campfire. Without warning, one member of the group overlooked a faint shimmer that began to flicker from the shadowy depths of the tunnel. In the blink of an eye, an arrow shot directly through the creature's skull, leaving its companion stunned in disbelief. With determination, the adventurers rushed forward, eager to engage in the fight. At that instant, both fighters sprang into action, slashing through the goblins with swift, decisive blows from their blades. At the same time, the archer observed that their progress appeared smooth, yet the mage cautioned her to remain vigilant. Once the clash ended, the team assembled, their attention fixed on the dimly lit corridor stretching before them. At that moment, offered to go ahead and check the path, and Iris reminded her to stay safe and to signal if anything happened. As moved forward, she came upon a hallway strewn with the bodies of fallen goblins. Her face abruptly shifted, growing tense and serious. The swordsman noticed her unease and inquired about it, prompting her to explain that she had just heard an odd sound. A faint outline began to emerge gradually from within his darkness. Within moments, an enormous beast emerged from beneath the earth. Taken by surprise, everyone in the group quickly shifted their attention toward the person who was appearing in front of them. In that moment, the group understood they were facing a massive, mutated goblin, an unexpected threat that hadn't been listed in their mission briefing. With the weapon ready, Iris declared her intention to concentrate on defeating the target and began outlining her strategy to the others. She directed to aim for the goblin's right eye and counted on to distract the creature long enough for her to deliver the final blow. The archer, adhering to the plan, sprang off a boulder with their bow ready, carefully lining up a precise shot. Her arrows flew with precision, piercing the creature straight through its eye. While the creature staggered in agony, urgently called out to Mile, instructing him to lift his shield without delay. Together, the pair of warriors rushed forward, their weapons crackling with vibrant energy as they prepared to clash. Just as Locke launched his attack, he noticed that his efforts barely made an impact. As he swung, he suddenly realized that something wasn't right. The goblin reached out with its enormous hand, attempting to capture him. At that instant, Iris began readying a spell that would unleash a burst of mana. She summoned several orbs of energy and hurled them at the goblin, each one striking its target with force. The force of the blow caused the creature to stumble backward, letting out a furious roar. With overwhelming force, the creature flung yet another goblin straight toward the group. Overwhelmed by shock, exclaimed that the creature had actually hurled one of its own kind. Instantly shouted a warning to Iris, urging her to get down just as the body came flying in her direction. Emerging from the darkness, Asher stepped in and activated his power, causing the flying object to veer off course before it could reach its target. A burst of force hit the airborne goblin, causing it to veer off course. The quartz slammed forcefully against the stone wall, narrowly missing the mage. Iris lay sprawled on the floor, her eyes fixed on the shadowy mark marring the wall. Simultaneously, a different arrow zoomed by at incredible speed. The projectile flew straight into the last eye of the massive goblin, hitting its mark with precision. The force of the blow knocked the monster down, leaving it utterly vanquished. The group hurried over to Iris, who quickly let them know she was unharmed. Despite her lingering confusion, she observed that the goblin had abruptly altered its course mid-flight, sparing her from being struck directly. At last, Lok proposed that everyone head back to the village to claim their reward, now that the mission had been accomplished. Concealed again, Asher observed the group as they left, quietly reflecting on how lucky they were that the situation hadn't escalated further. Close to where the goblin's body lay, it became apparent that he had secretly trailed the group without being seen, intent on watching one of the specimens. After observing the other variants and noticing their ragged grins, he realized that this particular goblin stood apart from the rest. In contrast to the rest, this particular subject amounted to little more than an unsuccessful trial. After regrouping, Iris gave the team orders to search the surroundings for any monsters that might still be lurking nearby. At that moment, Asher understood that the mage possessed an acute sensitivity to mana, which explained why she had detected his presence before. It had not happened by chance. He let out a frustrated sigh, realizing that his encounter with the creature had yielded no valuable information. Without warning, he was taken aback by an unexpected voice. A man stepped out from the shadows within the cave, noting to himself that a visitor had come while he was away. Iris quickly questioned who he was and firmly cautioned him to keep his distance. The newcomer stepped forward and revealed that he was responsible for taking care of the place they had just ruined. He clarified that the creature had exposed where they were hiding by constructing a totem. Because the attempt to control the goblin's mind could not diminish its natural urges, he wondered aloud if anyone else in the group had observed any odd actions from the creature. Since no dialogue followed his question, he assumed nothing noteworthy had occurred and grew anxious about how the professor might respond. Realizing he had to fix the error, he announced his intention to eliminate everyone in the room. Upon receiving the warning, the group of adventurers quickly themselves for combat. Iris wondered aloud whether he intended to face the battle by himself. The man affirmed this, explaining that it had been the sole method to guarantee they would not speak. In a final effort to prevent any arguments, she assured them she would keep everything confidential. He rejected the suggestion, making it clear that he never planned to allow any of them to survive. A wicked grin spread across his face as he revealed that his deepest desire was nothing more than listening to their screams. He strode toward the group, mocking them as he challenged anyone to volunteer to jump in first. Without warning, another voice announced that he alone would face death. Amused, the man dismissed this claim, finding the confidence laughable. Almost instantly, he understood that the sound originated from somewhere behind him. He spun around, scanning his surroundings in an attempt to discover who had spoken. Asher emerged from the darkness, his presence challenging the man's warnings about cries for help and fatal consequences. The intruder accused the man of faking his strength, causing the man to lower himself into a guarded stance, ready to defend himself. Energy surged around Asher's body as a spell took shape in his hands. In a cold tone, he demanded to know if the other person agreed. Asher moved forward, approaching the man while making it clear that getting involved had not been his original plan. Despite everything, he had no choice but to step in, knowing that without his involvement, the people relying on him would have been completely destroyed. At that instant, he remembered the way the man had called the goblin an experiment. The reference to someone known as the professor piqued his interest as well. Confident in her conviction, the caretaker fixed him with a stern gaze, her expression demanding that he reveal his identity. Asher chose to stay silent, focusing instead on setting up an elaborate magic circle. The caretaker insisted that the truth about his identity was unimportant, regardless of whether anyone ever discovered who he really was. Cloaked in a shimmering aura, he sprang toward his target, inwardly determined that he would be the one to end Asher's life. The mage reacted by summoning several blazing arrows through a powerful spell. The caretaker met every blazing shot with swift surges of energy, cutting them down before they could reach their target. At that instant, the man's sword struck forcefully against the protective barrier conjured by Asher's magic. The protective shield broke apart, sending a surge of magical energy that forcefully knocked the opponent off their feet. Upon touching down, the caretaker noticed that his swift movement was thanks to legs strengthened by a surge of energy. Simultaneously, Asher observed that his adversary moved with remarkable swiftness, prompting him to realize that he must adjust his approach in the upcoming fight. The caretaker admired how quickly Asher performed his spell, then announced his own intention to match that speed. He boldly sprang off the wall, aiming himself in a direct plunge toward the mage. Asher unleashed a powerful attack by merging the forces of Winter Gale and Ice Magic through a dual casting technique. His opponent was caught off guard when he demonstrated control over both ice and wind at the same time. A torrent of freezing wind and shards of ice hurtled in the caretaker's direction. Despite recognizing the impressive technique behind the assault, the man skillfully dodged every incoming shot. He leapt above Asher, mocking the effort by pointing out that an attack meant nothing if it failed to hit. The mage stays motionless, keeping their head bowed. At the final moment, the caretaker's burst of energy cut through the air just above his head, missing him by only a few inches. Asher quickly shifted his weight backward, managing to avoid the strike entirely. Both the caretaker and Iris were taken aback by how deftly the move was dodged. The onlookers struggled to understand how the mage managed to move so swiftly. Right after that moment, Asher cast a fiery spell that surrounded his entire body in blazing flames. A tremendous blast engulfed the spot where the caretaker had been moments before, swallowing the surroundings in flames and debris. Within moments, heavy rain started to cascade over the battlefield. Caught in the raging storm, the adversary suddenly understood that he had fallen into an ambush. Determined not to be fooled a second time, he silently promised himself to never let such a tactic succeed again. Asher wondered aloud whether this change would render him immune to traps, and with newfound determination, he resolved to embrace his role as a genuine mage from that point on. The earth shook violently, lifting without warning beneath Iris's feet, forcing a startled cry from her as the soil heaved and buckled below. The stone column kept rising upward, causing confusion among the group as they watched in astonishment. Once the chaos subsided, Iris identified the spell as terrain manipulation and felt a surge of surprise that someone would use such magic during a fight. She understood that his ability to cast spells so quickly, and on such a grand scale, could only mean he possessed an extraordinary amount of mana. She realized that his way of fighting was unlike any she had witnessed in the past. The caretaker ridiculed Asher's decision to escape into the sky, pointing out the irony since Asher had just vowed to stand his ground and battle like a true mage. He soon noticed that his opponent had managed to elevate both himself and the adventurers at the same time. He realized only after the fact that the heat from the earlier flames had caused the ice shards to melt, leaving a puddle of water beneath him. At that instant, Asher reached out his hand in its direction. The caretaker, puzzled, raised their gaze toward the ceiling. At the same time, Iris kept a careful eye on everything unfolding before her. She instantly identified the spell as lightning magic. Asher summoned the power of a third-tier lightning spell. The task was so challenging that just a few professors at the academy were capable of mastering it. The overwhelming surge of energy left him battling desperately to keep it under control. Caught off guard, the caretaker urgently asked who Asher was. He was astonished by his newfound ability to control fire, ice, wind, and even lightning. Iris suddenly understood that he was using a triple cast, skillfully combining several elements together in a single spell. The force of their joined attack triggered a powerful blast, sending a thick cloud of dust and shattered fragments billowing into the air. Gradually, the haze started to clear from the air. As the mist faded away, the mage floated gently down and landed on the earth. He pressed the caretaker for information regarding the orc he had come across, wanting to know the truth. Afterward, he questioned whether all beings like that orc had any ties to the professor. Wounded and lying on the ground, the man realized that Asher was the one who had determined the orc's destiny. Wearing a crooked grin, he inquired whether the youthful mage hailed from the Ark. Hearing the word Ark caused a look of confusion to spread across Asher's face. The caretaker insisted that there was no reason for Asher to be informed, yet Asher continued to ask where the professor could be found, making it clear that he was curious about the experiments. Despite understanding the risk involved, Hammond started to reveal where the professor could be found. In an unexpected turn, he decided to meet his end with Asher, releasing something from his mouth as he did so. At the very last moment, Asher conjured a protective barrier of magic to shield himself from harm. He quickly grasped what the man was planning, and a powerful spell meant to end everything. He felt a deep sense of disappointment as he realized that all his attempts to uncover information about the jesters had led nowhere. Despite his lingering doubts, he decided to concentrate on the tasks ahead. With determination, he approached the group of adventurers. A shadowy figure with luminous eyes appeared in front of the group, ready to reveal his choice. In a chilling tone, he informed everyone that they must obey his orders from that moment forward. Returning to the village, Iris reported to Asher that she had carried out his instructions and had been rewarded with additional payment by the chief. She clarified that in return for staying quiet about the mutant goblin, she would receive a payment of 1.2 million ALK. After their deal was finalized, Asher extended a pouch filled with coins toward her, urging her to take it. Caught off guard, she paused for a moment, but he quickly explained that the money was actually payment for the assignment. Afterward, he asked the others to join him on a journey to the city of Martus. As they traveled, Iris used the time to ask him about the principles behind elemental magic, and before long, the group reached where they were headed. Asher stepped into the city and scanned the bustling streets, his eyes alert as he looked for a bank. As the rest of the group made their way to the guild to file their reports, Iris received the responsibility of showing him the way. He had shown interest in managing his own reward and setting up a bank account, so she proposed that their first stop should be City Hall. She stepped forward with assurance, insisting that her familiarity with was unmatched. From afar, the others observed their leader's composure, noting how unshaken they appeared despite the recent events in the cave. The group's initial stop was Marty City Hall, where officials managed the distribution of rewards. At the doorway, Edgar stepped in front of Asher, trying to prevent him from entering because Asher lacked acceptable identification. The issue came to an end after he showed the guarantee that Baron Pathy had provided. Within the building, an official greeted him warmly, expressing excitement and mentioning prior knowledge of his accomplishments. His thankfulness arose because Asher had safeguarded the Baron's land from bandit attacks, a place where his family made their home. Without warning, the man handed him a brand-new ID card. Because of this, Asher managed to set up a bank account with ease. Even though he still possessed his previous account, he realized that logging in might alert the tower's master to his presence. Bearing this in mind, he decided to act with care. He then approached a blacksmith, asking for his weapon to be transformed into a staff. The smith predicted the job would take about 3 days to finish and promised to supply a temporary team to help during that period. While they strolled along, Iris wondered aloud about his choice of weapon. He responded with a shrug, explaining that wielding brooms had simply become second nature to him over time. Not long afterward, the group reaches the Martus public library. Iris's curiosity led her to wonder aloud if he was in search of books about enchantments, though she cautioned him that such material could prove too advanced for his current abilities. He responded that only the essentials were needed. After that, she inquired about the number he planned to bring. Asher responded unexpectedly, claiming that he had solved every single one. Inside the vast reading hall, the librarian made an effort to step in. When they caught sight of the towering pile of books, Asher asked for the payment to be taken directly from his account and arranged for the books to be sent to his hotel room. After the confirmation, the librarian rejoiced, thrilled to witness what would become the most remarkable sale the library had ever seen. As the day drew to a close, Iris slumped wearily over her desk, drained from the long hours, while Asher stayed completely absorbed in his reading, hardly noticing the world around him. After pausing to regain her breath, she wondered aloud whether she had finally brought him to all the places he wished to visit. He told her that they had done enough for the day, leaving her taken aback by how straightforward his response was. A short while later, Iris noticed she didn't know what to call him and resolved to find out his name. Peering over the edge of his book, he revealed that his name was Asher, yet he assured her she was free to address him by any name she preferred. She agreed to the suggestion and requested that they start talking in a more relaxed and informal way from that moment forward. Seizing the moment, Iris gathered her courage and asked why he had come to the cave. He paused, considering the question in silence, unable to respond right away. After thinking for a moment, he offered an unclear explanation, claiming that he had been following the man. Upon hearing those words, she appeared to grasp the meaning. At that moment, she recalled how he had inquired about the professor hidden within the cave, and she started connecting the clues in her mind. Asher observed that, even though his own progress was minimal, the day had stretched on for quite some time and suggested that she take a break. Despite Iris's willingness to show him around, knowing he was unfamiliar with the city, he chose to refuse her offer and go alone. As they parted ways on the street, she bid him farewell for the night and assured him they would meet again tomorrow. As she moved farther from her workplace, a sense of quiet satisfaction washed over her, marking the close of a tiring day. He sank onto a bench and quietly admitted to himself that there was something unusual about him. As she thought back, she recognized his incredible command over magic, realizing he could control every element with a limitless source of mana. He not only understood theories more advanced than those of most professors, but he also showed a remarkable gift for teaching others. She observed that his looks hinted at a certain level of popularity. Each time she interacted with him, she noticed how rigid he became, standing as motionless and tense as a scarecrow. Without warning, she pressed her hands to her face, bewildered by the persistent memories of him that kept appearing in her thoughts. After much consideration, she realized he possessed magical abilities beyond anyone else she had encountered, marking him as an extraordinary and uncommon talent. With determination, she made up her mind to question him further about elemental magic the next day. Just then, the sound of an explosion echoed from far away, drawing her focus. She quickly spun in the direction from which the noise had come. She was filled with dread as she saw that the hotel had been overtaken by a raging fire. She instantly recalled that this was where Asher had taken up residence. A human figure hovered above the flames, outlined by the fire below. Iris gazed at the unfolding scene, struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. Asher stepped into view, his gaze shining with a fierce and unwavering brightness. Inside a laboratory, a figure cloaked in a hood relayed grim news to a man wearing glasses, revealing that the surgeon had died. The man inquired about the identity of his killer, while the hooded figure responded by mentioning the discovery of evidence pointing to harmful magic. When the man realized that another person was responsible for Surgeon's death, he angrily threw a vial at the hooded figure's face. Warned him sternly not to feign ignorance. Fixing her with an intense stare, he insisted once more on learning who was responsible for death. The person who had been quoted clarified that they still did not know who the culprit was. The man expressed his sorrow over the surgeon's passing, then shifted his attention to inquire about the condition of the test subject. The subordinate reported that every sign of the surgeon and the test subject had been thoroughly eliminated. Hearing this, the professor scolded him for not taking care of the surgeon's murderer, too. At that instant, he realized that the deaths of the goblin and surgeon were linked to the unexplained silence from the two test subjects belonging to Sperony. As the experiment drew to a close, he began to question whether the organization called the Ark had already found out about their activities. The man instructed the hooded figure to stay away until he had eliminated the person at fault. The messenger set out with unwavering resolve, intent on uncovering the culprit no matter the price. At the same time, events were unfolding at the hotel. While Asher focused on honing his basic enchantment skills, someone's voice interrupted his concentration with a greeting. As he kept practicing, the mysterious voice urged him to hurry and sleep, cautioning that his final moment would arrive as soon as he lay down. Without warning, the hooded figure concealed under the bed began to question the unusual quiet filling the room. He realized with surprise that someone had found him when the Bone of Earth spell began to take shape. Asher launched a swift attack with his staff, causing the intruder to stumble back in shock. Right after that, the enemy lifted off the ground, surrounded by a fierce, fiery glow. In the midst of the gathering, the assassin observed as someone unleashed explosive magic within the limited area. Based on this observation, he determined that Asher possessed the abilities of a third-tier mage. He chose to withdraw for now, and in order to distract the crowd and ensure his getaway, he loudly claimed there was a terrorist attack, throwing everyone into chaos. Asher wasted no time, instructing everyone to escape immediately and inform the guards about what had happened without delay. In the midst of the turmoil, he pondered how the assassin could have slipped past his magical senses without being noticed. He noticed that the opponent's hurried actions had led to a critical error. Through the complete erasure of his own presence, he stood out to Asher even more, resembling a shadowy void starkly contrasted against an untouched sheet of paper. Without hesitation, the attacker lunged forward and delivered a direct blow to him. While escaping, the assassin puzzled over how his presence had been detected and tried to imagine what force the Ark had dispatched to pursue him. Taken aback by how quickly his rival acted, he hesitated in surprise. Asher, showing no sign of worry, began to ready a spell that would transform into a magical arrow. As the enemy raced down the narrow alley, they skillfully avoided each projectile coming their way. He sprang backward into the scattered debris, raising his arms in a desperate attempt to protect himself from the oncoming wave of magical attacks. From his vantage point above, Asher watched closely and wondered aloud whether the other person had gone inside solely to dodge his assault. Touched down before the creature, determined to keep pursuing it. Once inside, he noticed that the assassin had selected a structure currently inhabited by homeless individuals. At that moment, one of the men approached Asher, questioning him about the disturbance, but Asher ignored the inquiry and instead demanded to know the whereabouts of the assassin. The man responded with an ironic smile, his expression silently acknowledging the other's impatience. He indicated that he would only share information if he was compensated. Asher let out a sigh as he realized that there weren't any clear paths to escape within the room. As soon as he realized the assassin hadn't escaped, a sharp blade skimmed across his cheek. The opposing force had grabbed the man and positioned him as a barrier, driving a blade into him while aiming to wound Asher. Concealed by the corpse, the assassin observed Asher intently, waiting to see how he would respond. Asher fixed him with a sharp look, instantly identifying the signature sequence of the move. He acted instantly, sending out a powerful shockwave that slammed the enemy into the far wall. Several days after the impact, the assassin swiftly devised a strategy. The plan was to trick Asher into wasting his strength by creating a magical shield, then use the distraction from a smoke bomb to slip away unnoticed. He extended his arm, pushing it ahead in a last attempt to land a decisive blow. To everyone's surprise, Asher made no move to summon a barrier. Instead, he identified the spell as it took shape of earth. The mana gathered intensely at the end of the staff, focusing on attack rather than forming a protective barrier, which came as an unexpected development. At that moment, he realized his adversary possessed equal skill in hand-to-hand fighting. The impact struck him directly, sending him stumbling backward. The magic surged around him, raising his body off the ground and holding him completely still. In a moment of desperation, the assassin resorted to his final option. A cloud of smoke suddenly filled the air. A loud blast sent a dense cloud of dark smoke swirling through the entire room. To clear away the shadowy mist, Asher summoned a swirling gust of wind. As the haze quickly faded away, a streak of crimson became visible along the ground. Still feeling doubtful, he questioned whether the adversary had actually managed to get away. Without warning, a commanding voice broke the silence, instructing him to stay completely still. Encircled by guards, he learned of his arrest for committing arson and other offenses. While the city of Marks lay quietly at rest, officials diligently compiled a summary of the incident. Mayor Henry raised doubts about Asher's involvement, wondering aloud if he could really be behind the terrorist attack. Immediately, one of the officers explained that Asher was actually the target of an attempted assassination, which had resulted in the conflict. Oscar went on to clarify that the situation seemed to be connected to a different case. He had taken charge of overseeing the investigation himself because of the seriousness of the incident. The mayor expressed worry for the new arrival and inquired about what had caused the destruction. The officer explained that the destruction had been limited to the inn's top floor and mentioned that a notorious criminal had lost their life, but the assassin responsible was still missing. The report included the account of a woman adventurer who had come across both a mutated goblin and someone who attacked with their arm while exploring a cave. Explained that during their visit to the location, they had discovered no evidence of bodies or goblins. The area stood deserted, showing no evidence of any monsters or living beings nearby. The mayor came to the realization that a coordinated group was going after adventurers and showed worry that more problems could happen in the future. He acknowledged the suspicion and went on to clarify that, although he had attempted to appoint a protector for the young man, he had run into an obstacle. He explained that news had circulated throughout the city, leading both adventurers and soldiers to decline offering him protection. Confronted by the circumstances, the mayor resolved to consult his personal knights regarding the issue. The following day, Asher stood in the reception area of City Hall, accompanied by his newly finished staff that had been crafted in record time. As he considered starting the chase, someone entered the room and made their presence known with a spoken greeting. A knight soon stepped forward, announcing that his name was Jason and revealing his position as the vice-captain of the Knights of. He explained that he had been assigned to protect him as his bodyguard. He proceeded to inquire whether anyone had questions, as the young mage quietly watched him without saying a word. At that instant, Asher understood that the doubts surrounding him had disappeared, yet he became aware of how early it still was in the night. Due to this situation, he requested permission to leave, but Jason insisted that he could only do so if Jason stayed by his side the entire time. Despite his hesitation, Asher consented to depart, which left the knight puzzled about where they were headed. As the group traveled for hours, the sky gradually shifted as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Feeling weary, Jason eventually inquired about their precise destination. The mage remembered the requirement, and as the knight grumbled about how long they had been walking, the mage declared that they had reached their destination. A massive structure loomed ahead, and he explained that this was the destination he had planned to reach. Though uncertainty lingered in his mind, Jason wondered aloud about the reason behind their day-long journey that had led them to this particular place. Asher remained silent and instead sent a powerful burst of flames crashing into the building. As the knight stood frozen in disbelief, the newcomer clarified that his purpose for being there was to search for a particular individual. He wore a grave expression as he explained that he was on the hunt for the person who had attempted to take his life the previous day. Jason inquired about the situation, and Asher responded by affirming that the enemy was definitely located in that area. At last, he revealed that he had made brief contact with the assassin's body in order to place a tracking spell on them. He clarified the function of the trace spell. Link absorbed the target's mana, which traveled straight into him. Because the trace remained intact, the assassin remained unaware of its presence. Jason spoke about the incredible strength of the magic, but then his attention was drawn to something strange lying on the ground. The blast uncovered a secret doorway leading down into an underground tunnel. Using his magical abilities, the young mage discovered that the tracks went straight into the tunnel ahead. He inquired whether Jason recognized the tunnel, but the knight responded by shaking his head and clarifying that an entrance to that area was never meant to exist. Jason came to understand how serious things had become, recognizing that the existence of an undiscovered tunnel leaving the city posed a significant threat. The incident marked a serious violation of Mars's security protocols. Holding his sword tightly, the vice-captain insisted that the area must be sealed off without delay. The mage cut in, insisting that chasing after the assassin mattered more than anything else. Despite the circumstances, Jason proposed bringing in backup. However, Asher declined, reasoning that doing so would result in losing sight of their target. He slipped into the corridor, firmly believing that chasing after them right away was the best course of action. Jason fixed his gaze on the shadowy tunnel, his annoyance with his companion's behavior clear in his expression. He leaped in after them, muttering under his breath about how bothersome he found all mages to be. At the same time, the assassin made their way down the shadowy, endless tunnel beneath the ground. He felt a deep sense of regret for having spent so many hours at that location. After his escape, he was forced to tend to his injuries, and the time it took filled him with anxiety that the professor could end his life. Despite considering the option, he quickly rejected the thought of running away, fully aware that the insatiable hunger would always catch up to him. Left without alternatives, he stepped into the room, silently wishing that the professor might be compassionate. The mysterious figure offered a mocking welcome, making a sly remark about how well-known his face had become in Marts. Bendy reprimanded him for causing such a commotion, which ended up drawing the attention of both the mayor and the guild to where they were. He insisted on being given a straightforward and detailed account of the events that had taken place. The assassin explained that once he had prepared his ambush, his presence was discovered, and he was hit by a powerful, wide-reaching spell. He recounted how, despite throwing a smoke bomb to make his getaway, the mage had continued to chase him without giving up. Claimed that he had only managed to get away due to the knights showing up, yet the professor remained skeptical of his explanation. In that instant, the leader's expression shifted as understanding dawned on them about what had really occurred. Without hesitation, he instructed the assassin to take off his armor and destroy it in the fire immediately. The moment the armor landed in the flames, a hidden tracking magic circle shimmered into view on its surface. At that moment, the criminal realized that the spell had been cast upon him amid the struggle. The professor's expression twisted with panic as he urgently announced that someone had discovered them. Without delay, he instructed that every piece of evidence be eliminated as he transported the specimen, and the assassin followed his orders without hesitation. Just then, a huge burst of flames erupted from the mouth of the tunnel. Surrounded by roaring fire, the fugitive noticed that the trace reaction was gone, and in that moment, finally grasped the truth of the situation. A short time later, the mage and the knight walked into the room, where the enemy curled their lips in a mocking smile, expressing that their arrival was unfortunate. Holding his staff tightly and standing beside Jason, the young mage announced that there was no longer any time left. The two groups stood opposite each other in the room, tension thick in the air, as the realization settled among them that their chance had already slipped away. The young mage narrowed his eyes, carefully studying his adversaries to better understand the unfolding situation. Judging by the way they were prepared to fight, he immediately identified the assassin and realized that the person standing behind him must be the professor. At that moment, the mysterious silhouette merged in the onlookers, minds with horrifying beasts and twisted scientific trials. The professor turned to him with a curious look, wondering aloud whether he might be the mad mage, and noting that the Ark had chosen to send a rather unusual individual. When the young man heard the name Ark, he resolved to take down the group before questioning them for details. He reacted without hesitation, summoning a spear of earth, yet the assassin quickly stepped in to protect his master from harm. Despite his efforts, the professor reprimanded the subordinate for causing such a mess, leaving the subordinate to offer nothing but a quiet apology in response. Left with no alternative, the man instructed his subordinate to handle the situation and delay their pursuers, giving him a chance to get away. The mage insisted on staying put, unleashing a burst of magical energy in the form of an arrow to halt his opponent's escape. With remarkable speed, the assassin sprang forward and intercepted the spell, shielding others from its impact. Clutching his weapon tightly, he announced that he had been instructed to delay as long as possible. The mage paused, caught between the fear that minor spells would have no effect and the worry that powerful magic might destroy crucial clues. Right then, Jason rushed ahead and intercepted the enemy's attack by raising his sword in defense. As the enemy kept the knight busy, he urged his companion to keep moving ahead, assuring him that he would rejoin him shortly. The mage suddenly advanced, energy swirling around them, catching Jason off guard. He sped through the tunnel so quickly that a shimmering trail of magic marked his path. When he arrived at the end of the corridor, he paused and carefully looked around, hoping to find some sign that the professor had been there. Without warning, an acrid odor drifted through the air, immediately drawing his notice. He immediately noticed the unmistakable smell of death and spotted a silhouette standing at the far end of the narrow path, clearly expecting his arrival. The professor welcomed the student, expressing both astonishment at how quickly he had arrived and satisfaction at having the opportunity to present his research. With a sweeping motion, he unveiled numerous shadowy cages crowded with strange animals, then turned to inquire about the observer's opinion of these beings he had brought into existence. The young man quickly recognized the figures as jesters and understood that the man before him was their maker. The professor went on to clarify that these were imperfect beings, ones who had not completely embraced his vision. He picked up a remote control, confident that it would easily be sufficient to deter any unwanted guest. With a decisive motion, he pushed the button, unleashing every creature in the room and sending them swarming toward the mage in a coordinated assault. With the monsters drawing nearer, Asher a powerful attack that would cover a large area, determined not to let any time slip away. He concentrated deeply, skillfully blending the forces of water and lightning into a single, powerful spell. A powerful wave of lightning burst forth, filling the hall and hitting every creature in its path. The professor found himself unprepared for the surge of energy that suddenly filled the room. The powerful spell sent him flying across the room, slamming him onto the floor. Disoriented and trembling from the magical attack, he accused Asher of being insane. At that moment, he understood that the claims about him being just a third-level mage were entirely inaccurate. It would have taken someone with at least fourth-level abilities for Asher to manage magic of such magnitude. The man lay stretched across the floor, mourning the possibility that years of his painstaking research might be lost forever if everything stopped at that moment. Driven by desperation, he dragged himself toward a prominent red button and forcefully pressed it down. A containment capsule suddenly emerged from beneath the surface, uncovering a human-like shape enclosed within. Not long after, he announced that the moment had come to bring his greatest creation to life. Inside, the being hidden away slowly awakened. Without warning, the young mage materialized behind him, demanding to know his intended destination. The professor insisted on learning how he had managed to get by the creatures, but the response he received was exactly what he had expected. Asher's expression grew solemn as he revealed that he had destroyed all traces by burning them. From that response, it became clear to the man that only an extraordinary mage could have accomplished such a feat, which validated his suspicions. The reflection of his rival shimmered across his glasses as he confidently announced his belief that Asher truly possessed the powers of a fourth-level mage. He gestured toward the being inside the capsule, wanting to know what the boy noticed beside him. With a proud smile, he explained that he considered it his greatest creation, his own daughter. When he pushed the button, he explained that the creature before them represented gluttony, serving as the living symbol of his group's beliefs. He confidently proclaimed that this young one symbolized the hope and promise of mankind's tomorrow. Without pausing, the mage swiftly prepared an attack, cutting off any chance for his opponent to complete his move. He recognized his mistake just an instant after it happened, noticing that the button had already been pushed before he could react. The creature stepped out of the capsule, its form now completely altered, representing a dark vision of what unchecked consumption and evolution could become. Once the creature balanced itself on the ground, realization dawned on the young man. He could now grasp the professor's true intentions. Lying on the floor, the man celebrated, announcing that the mad mage's magical energy would now feed his invention. The creature's lips curled into a menacing grin as its hungry, luminous eyes locked onto him. With its sharp teeth bared, the creature announced its hunger. The mage jumped in surprise as the creature suddenly began to speak. Before he had a chance to respond, the being cried out once more, declaring its hunger and sending out a powerful burst of energy. The creature locked eyes with him, expressing a ravenous intent and declaring that he appeared appetizing enough to be eaten. Immediately, Asher's eyes landed on the creature. He channeled energy into his body, mastering abilities in moments that others spent years trying to learn. He observed the artificial being harness its abilities to spring toward him. The creature unleashed a series of swift blows, targeting the areas he couldn't see and compelling him to focus on defending himself. As the mage struggled to repel the creature, he found himself captivated by its design, acknowledging inwardly that, for something crafted by a researcher, it was truly remarkable. The fight could not go on any longer. The creature let out a deafening roar and hurled itself against his protective energy barrier, using every ounce of its strength. Without hesitation, the young man swung his staff, delivering a direct blow to the creature's face. The impact hurled the beast across the area, sending it crashing to the earth with enough power to break the ground beneath it. At last, the mage faced the defeated enemy and confidently announced that she could not stand against his power. For 7 years, the individual managed to endure life as an experimental subject within's magic tower. The young man struggled to keep his intense anger under control at all times. After every experiment, when he returned to his room, he channeled his feelings into driving himself to finish his theory. The creature rested motionless on the earth. As the confrontation intensified, feelings grew stronger, causing his features to harden with determination. After a moment, his thoughts sharpened, and an icy sense of logic began guiding everything he did. He gave the professor's greatest creation the name Mortal, believing its strength could rival even the slightest movement made by pith. The creature's remarkable ability to heal itself quickly became apparent, showcasing its impressive regenerative powers. Despite its appearance, the creature moved with an unusual level of agility, stretching and darting about with remarkable speed and flexibility. Despite this, the mage understood that its benefits went no further. As soon as he made his move, the creature sprang upward with remarkable speed. Without warning, a spear made of earth shot up from the ground and struck its target straight on. The young man admitted that his earlier assault was nothing more than a display of skill. Several enchanted arrows, planning his next attack carefully. The creature relied solely on sheer strength, unable to recognize deceptive moves or employ any real fighting technique. A jagged bone spike burst from its shoulder, revealing the creature's true nature as a monstrous beast disguised in a human shape. The mage stood impaled by sharp spikes, yet he still proclaimed that it was. The work lacked the strength needed to earn the title of a masterpiece. The professor stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how swiftly his invention had been defeated. He remembered writing that the creature took on the abilities of whatever it hunted. By undergoing this process, it would steadily increase in power, eventually transforming into the ultimate human, representing humanity's perfect evolutionary form. Even this supposed perfect form had been utterly overwhelmed without any resistance. The man noticed that the creature remained frail, and the thought of offering his own arm as nourishment crossed his mind, hoping it would help the creature regain its power. A fresh strategy taking shape in his mind, he resolved to eliminate the mage as his only chance to break free. Without warning, the young man raised his staff toward the other person, insisting that he reveal the location of the experimental records. He warned that if the records were not given to him, he would end his own child's life on the spot. Left with no other options, the professor did as he was told, secretly hoping that this could be his opportunity to make it out alive. He extended his research journal to others, asserting that its contents would demonstrate the value of his efforts. The young man grabbed the diary and rapidly skimmed its pages. Right after that, he tossed it onto the ground with the rest of the notes, making it clear to everyone that he had no meat to offer them. The man, clearly perplexed, questioned the other's actions in his mind, trying to understand what was happening. The mage recognized the importance of the research, yet he could not understand the reason for abandoning it. The stern expression clearly showed that this approach conflicted with his personal beliefs. While the professor pleaded desperately for mercy, the mage calmly reviewed the documents outlining the details of the terrorist scheme. He thought for a moment about asking the man regarding Ark and Gluttony, but soon decided against it and let the idea go. As Jason's footsteps drew nearer, the mage realized he had to put an end to everything to prevent any further trouble. He announced that the moment had come for him to vanish, as the professor desperately begged for one more opportunity. He acted swiftly, unleashing the ignite spell. The flames engulfed the man completely, leaving nothing untouched by the fire. A short while later, the knight reached the location and inquired about Sir Asher's well-being. In front of the crackling flames, Asher made sure he was unharmed, then inquired about the whereabouts of the would-be killer. Jason confidently claimed that his powerful hit had surely left the enemy in much worse shape. As the mage examined the document, it became clear from the vague answer that the intended target had managed to get away. Right then, he understood that the paper he was holding was, in fact, a map. While the knight inquired about the blaze, Asher observed that the area shown on the map was close to. His gaze settled on a crimson symbol that marked a particular spot. Without warning, a stabbing ache shot through his head, forcing him to double over from the force of it. He noticed the signs of mana exhaustion in himself and chose to retreat for the time being. Several days passed following the professor's defeat, and with his scheme brought to light, a sense of calm gradually settled over. After discovering the scientist's plans, the mayor became furious and ordered the Knights of Marts to be on the highest level of alert. The warriors strengthened their fortifications and declared their intent to close off the passage. However, this matter no longer troubled him. He now found himself worried about receiving mana expansion stimulants. Through the use of injections, he forced his body to endure the utmost extremes of physical strain. In only a matter of weeks, he managed to achieve the progress that would have normally taken a mage several years. Once the procedure was complete, he took slow, steady breaths as he worked to regain his strength. Having achieved rank 3 in the elemental magic system, he announced that it was time to advance to the next phase. In a shadowy corridor, someone sat silently. Seated on a grand throne, someone inquired about the professor's fate, wondering aloud if he had died. With a glass of wine in hand, the man noted to himself that at least one troublesome issue had been resolved. After discovering that the mage was to blame, he resolved that a face-to-face meeting with him was necessary. The training grounds of the Knights of Martyr basked under the radiant sunlight. At the same time, the young mage devoted countless hours to practicing with his recently acquired staff, steadily improving his abilities in battle. Not long after, he remembered the spot highlighted on the map. It was an abandoned research center. The entrance lay concealed under a tree deep within the woods, and it could only be opened by using a special machine. Within the facility, the only living creatures they encountered were rats and insects, with no other noteworthy life forms present. Despite their search, what they found instead was a symbol resembling a fang embedded in the tallest, a creature famous for its remarkable durability. Although they searched thoroughly, they were unable to uncover any details about the group known as Ark or the individual called Gluttony at the location. Nevertheless, the sorcerer took pride in having captured the rare creature at and averting disaster in Marts. Just then, a knight came up to relay that the mayor was searching for him. Inside City Hall, the head of expressed gratitude to him, openly admitting the significant obligation he felt in return. He went on to clarify that the uncovering of the scheme had allowed them to apprehend the remaining members of the group, who had been concealed within the city. Soon afterward, he requested that Asher keep his assistance confidential, and the mage consented, recognizing that secrecy would help prevent widespread alarm. Bask considered how essential it was to establish a strong reputation, recognizing that doing so would help him gain both wealth and valuable experience. He believed that earning the title of the city's savior would open up new doors for him. He had accomplished something much like this before when he was in Pega's territory. After their conversation ended, the mayor extended an invitation for him to join, finally disclosing the real motive behind concealing the event. The passage guided him to a secure chamber, a place where the city kept valuable objects, some bought, others seized from lawbreakers. As he stepped inside, the room unfolded before him as a treasure trove of enchanted objects, and the young man took in every detail, his eyes filled with wonder. The mayor, wishing to express gratitude, granted him the opportunity to select any object he desired, clarifying that this was the genuine reward for all he had done. The initial choice presented an expertly crafted blade, made to allow mana to flow into it with ease. Beyond that point, the vault contained an impressive array of finely crafted weapons and enchanted relics, and the mayor urged him to make his selection with care. He understood that, although there were plenty of ways to become well-known, moments like this did not come often. After making his request to inspect the equipment, he waited as the mayor, clearly appreciating his careful approach, granted him permission. The initial object he examined turned out to be the sprout staff, a tool that granted him only slight improvements. The next item was a magic cloak, but it was not as good as the one he already owned. A recovery ring offered some benefits, yet it fell short of being a worthwhile replacement for his existing equipment. As he weighed his choices, his attention was drawn to a faint sparkle coming from a display case. As he drew closer, he noticed a ring he didn't recognize, its center set with a vivid green stone, and picked it up. Despite his attempts to appraise the item, it remained unresponsive, indicating that it was probably not enchanted. The mayor encouraged him to take his time and focus on discovering what was truly important to him. The mage nodded, willing to spend as long as needed. As daylight gradually faded, evening began to settle in. In time, the mayor encouraged him to reach a conclusion, pointing out his careful and thorough nature. In the end, the young man decided on a protective necklace, which contained a mana barrier that would activate on its own. The mayor inquired about how much mana the device would use, but Asher confidently explained that this would not cause any issues. Nevertheless, the local officials concluded that a single item did not constitute a sufficient reward. He then presented the same ring that had earlier drawn the mage's interest. The young man, caught off guard, heard the mayor announce that he was now recognized as the hero of Martus and urge him to take the additional reward. Upon being questioned, the mage explained his intention to stay in for an extended period, as there were unresolved issues he needed to address. After the mayor promised his backing, the focus moved to a shadowy mine located within the borders of. A miner swung his pickaxe, shattering rocks within the cavern. He soon noticed an odd object lying on the ground. He opened the human skull, recoiling in horror as the gruesome scene was revealed. One of the other miners wondered aloud about the reason for his shouting, and he responded by saying that a regular swing of a pickaxe ought to have broken it apart. The companion, showing no sign of being impressed, merely nudged the skull out of the way to deal with the situation. He instructed the other man to pick up his equipment and return to his task, emphasizing that finishing quickly would allow them to head home sooner. Without warning, the leading miner gestured urgently over his shoulder, attempting to alert the others to a threat approaching from behind. Brushing off any concerns, the man confidently claimed nothing was present, unaware that a sinister, glowing skull had materialized in the air just behind him. The skull swiftly changed, taking on the form of a skeleton brought back to life, its bones surrounded by a haunting, glowing energy. As the skeletons launched their assault on the workers, the miners shouted urgent warnings, urging everyone to flee from the mine immediately. Amid the turmoil, the creatures quickly overpowered the workers, leaving them defeated. Soon afterward, word began to circulate about the undead awakening within thoughts. As unstoppable monsters began to appear, officials announced a state of emergency. Word of the survivors' ordeal quickly swept across the region, sending waves of panic through the population. At the same time, tales of misfortune spread rapidly as people shared his sorrowful story with one another. Before long, a messenger appeared in March, bringing news about the event. Before long, word of the events made its way to the band of adventurers stationed in Verdun. At this time, the mage started instructing Iris in the skill of enchantment magic. The entire month was spent completing the learning process. A month quietly slipped by after the professor had been subdued, with tranquility settling over the land. Throughout this period, the young man practiced enchantment magic alongside Iris and honed his combat skills under the guidance of an orc. Empowered by a magical warrior's spell, he sprang forward into the. He leapt through the air and drove his spear into his opponent. Immediately after he moved forward with speed, an attractive young man appeared. He used magic to enhance his physical power, quickness, and awareness. He skillfully avoided an attack, using his recently acquired powers to prove his expertise during the intense battle. Iris stared in disbelief as she realized that a mage had managed to overcome an orc using only his bare hands, finishing the fight in just 13 seconds. While he paused to regain his composure, she quietly watched him without saying a word. Afterward, he expressed his gratitude for the lessons, but the mage assured him that his talent was remarkable and insisted he would have mastered the skills without any help. The warrior admitted that her assistance had been crucial, as he had lost all his books in a fire and could not have succeeded alone. While they strolled together, the young woman observed him intently. Without warning, he insisted there was nothing wrong, prompting her to respond with astonishment as she hurried to clarify her intentions. He suggested that she keep those ideas to herself before turning and leaving her behind. In the city, the mage maintained that everything had simply been a mix-up. Just then, someone addressed him respectfully as Lord Asher. Before long, Oscar, who led Marty's guild, stepped forward and made it known that he had a favor to ask of everyone. The young man's memory quickly brought back the image of Oscar, the leader of the Marty's guild, who had been in charge of the inquiry during the time he was wrongly blamed. He realized that the favor being asked of him was connected to the recent appearance of undead swarming through the mines. Due to widespread tales about curses and sickness, none of the adventurers stepped forward to accept the task. Oscar had deliberately tracked him down, aware that he had recently prevented a terrorist plot from succeeding. Under usual circumstances, he would have turned down the offer. However, after using up his funds and craving greater recognition, he agreed to take on the mission. When the preparations got, several adventurers quietly remarked to each other about the strangeness that set him apart from the rest. The mage had honed their skills not just in magic, but also through rigorous training in close-quarters combat. Just then, Iris walked over and brought up the rumors, but he acted as if he was completely unaware. He questioned whether she felt any fear of the undead, pointing out that her group would be participating as well. She answered with assurance, stating that being an academy graduate meant such foolish gossip couldn't bother her. She mentioned that the chance was worthwhile, as their role would involve offering backup from a safe distance rather than engaging directly in battle. Wearing a solemn expression, he expressed his hope that the opportunity would genuinely prove beneficial, just as she had assured him. On the following morning, the group set out on their journey. A group of wagons moved steadily along a path winding through the dense forest. Within the carriage, the other mages observed that he maintained the use of the flight spell without pause, deliberately staying apart from the rest of the group. A female mage glanced at Iris, curious about how she knew the young man so well and wondering about the nature of their relationship. The girl, her face tinged with embarrassment, explained that their relationship could be described as that of a senior and a junior. The mage went on to describe how, in the midst of a perilous assignment, her entire team had been rescued by him, which led to a deepening of their bond in the days that followed. From afar, the young man caught sight of something unusual appearing on the horizon. The other mage wondered aloud whether they might have studied at the same academy, but Iris hesitantly clarified that he had actually served more as an instructor. Without warning, a young man showed up at the carriage door, informing everyone that the people were being chased by a swarm of undead. He immediately announced his decision to volunteer. Surging forward with impressive speed, he moved ahead to offer his support. When he noticed the swarm of skeletons, he saw it as an ideal chance to try out his skills. He retrieved a worn anticipation building as he prepared to witness the outcome of his months-long dedication to mastering enchantment magic. The tome in his possession was an uncommon artifact he had secretly taken from the magic tower, known for its ability to increase the magical strength of whoever used it. The object was an unofficial tome about elemental magic, containing a magic circle of connection that he had carefully drawn inside. The young man decided to cast a spell that would alter the landscape, hoping it would help him check if the connection was working. Summoning his magic, he sent a powerful surge of energy sweeping over the battlefield, eager to measure how strong it truly was. Within the carriage, the group of mages reacted with surprise when the ground shook and the undead army began to rise into the air. The young man tightened his grip, focusing intently to keep the spell's energy under control. Giant hands made of stone suddenly descended, obliterating the entire army of skeletons in a single moment. To conclude his work, he a double casting using the character summoned the power of the flame element and unleashed a fierce burst of fire. As he delivered the last blow, a massive blast erupted, swallowing up the whole field in its fiery embrace. The powerful flames consumed and destroyed all the remaining skeletons nearby. The mages stared in disbelief, silently questioning how he managed to possess enough magical energy to cast spells of such immense power. A few moments passed before the young man appeared, touching down in the center of the ruined landscape. He understood that his transformed form, together with the strength of the grimoire, was responsible for unleashing the powerful spell. He realized that the effort he had put into building the fishery had paid off, as he saw the results of his hard work standing before him. From a distance, Iris Watch observed and recognized that his abilities had already surpassed those of a typical fourth-level mage. Without warning, a bony hand reached out from behind and seized her shoulder. A bigger skeleton grabbed her from behind, catching her off guard and causing her to let out a startled scream. At that moment, a powerfully built man emerged and swiftly defeated the adversary with one decisive swing of his cleaver. Iris and Locke exchanged uncertain glances as they watched the newcomer, both too stunned by recent events to speak. The stranger raised a necklace marked with the number 2, silently inquiring about what was happening. Meanwhile, a different man was on the hunt for his target. A warrior clad in shining platinum armor held a heavy axe in their grasp. The brute faced the group, wondering aloud about the sudden silence that had settled over everyone. He asked again about the person he was searching for, and before long, those nearby recognized him as the infamous Butchered. The mage explained to him that, regarding the undead, they had all perished already. The hunter stared in shock, unable to comprehend how so many creatures could have vanished so completely. He remembered their account of the horde, and thought it odd that the entire group had been wiped out without anyone getting hurt. Looked over at the young man, silently questioning whether he had accomplished everything by himself. Moving closer, confronted him and inquired straightforwardly if he was responsible for the work. The young man's eyes glimmered as he met the gaze, his expression daring. He silently issued a challenge, questioning what the outcome would be if that were truly the case. The broom revealed that he was contracted to track down the undead, and accused Asher of taking away his target. During a heated exchange, the man leveled an accusation against him, claiming he had meddled in his tasks. Both figures stood enveloped in their glowing auras, as proclaimed that consequences would follow and a price would be paid. Suspended above the ground, the young man wondered aloud about the corresponding cost, his curiosity evident in his expression. Upon realizing this, observed that he had intentionally increased the space between them, adopting a stance typical of mages preparing for battle. Though he didn't fully grasp the situation, the boy fixed a serious gaze on the other, weighing whether a confrontation might occur. The brute's eyes sparkled with excitement as a wide grin spread across his face, clearly showing that he anticipated having a good time. One of the men cautioned Iris about his risky attempt to challenge the butcher. He went on to describe as a figure of immense strength and peril, recounting how had once injured a knight severely during a furious outburst. The mage, visibly stunned, wondered aloud about the guild's failure to address such a grave offense. The man acknowledged that no consequences had been given, as the guild relied on the brute's power. Not long afterward, the mage named Goad clarified that someone of his platinum rank was exempt from those rules, and the guild was fully aware of this exception. The ranger standing beside him urgently requested that Go stop offering explanations and instead assist in keeping the situation from getting worse. The mage moved ahead and urged to relax, clarifying that the opposing group was simply fulfilling their assignment. The butcher, on the other hand, proposed that they could just eliminate the group and shift the blame onto the undead. Driven by a desire to demonstrate his superior strength, glanced at the young man and observed how self-assured he appeared. Radiating power, he announced his intention to subdue his opponent, using magic to forcefully hold him down. Despite the intense pressure surrounding him, the young person recognized it as merely the strength typical of a third-level mage. Feeling the pressure bearing down on him, he understood that the move was simply an uncontrolled surge of mana, impacting everyone nearby. His eyes began to shine as he himself to face the powerful pressure surrounding him. In the blink of an eye, he shrugged off the magical force as if it were nothing and rendered Goad unconscious with just one swift action. The Brook observed with astonishment, suddenly aware that the mage possessed unexpected strength. He realized the youth possessed much greater strength than he had anticipated and inquired about the young man's identity. As his eyes continued to emit a bright glow, he calmly introduced himself as Asher. Galliard smiled warmly as he parted ways, expressing his intention to meet him again in. The clash with the Butcher's group wrapped up more quickly than anyone had anticipated. Due to their responsibility to safeguard the survivors, the team was forced to postpone their arrival in territory. Following his confrontation with the platinum-ranked adventurer, the boy came to understand that he had made enemies within that group. The following morning, Van the Lord of expressed his gratitude to all who had responded to his call. He proceeded to declare that soldiers were to head straight for the mines without delay. With the help of the Moon Order, the goal of their mission became wiping out the undead army that had appeared. As Group stood among the audience, he brought his speech to a close, expressing his hope that everyone would remain safe and that no one would lose their life. Once Marty saw that his dispatch team was prepared, he signaled everyone to set out. As the group themselves for the coming fight, the Butcher walked over to the young man and wondered aloud if he felt anxious. One of his companions cautioned against engaging in a fight, yet he assured them that he would defend himself only if someone started trouble with him first. Instructing the soldiers to concentrate on the fight, the leader gave a signal, prompting the undead horde to charge fiercely at the troops. The clash erupted into chaos as a tremendous explosion marked the start of the battle. The commander instructed the soldiers to target the heads of their opponents, determined to guarantee their defeat. He further cautioned that unless the bodies were targeted in a specific way, they would heal from any attacks, and at the same time he requested assistance from those positioned at a distance. Without warning, a blood golem rose out of the swirling mass, prompting a nearby cleric to urgently command the group to fall back in order to avoid being overwhelmed. The priest emphasized the caution, making it clear that regular swords would be useless against a monster like that. The brute wasted no time, vaulting past the soldiers and rushing headlong toward the Colossus on his own. He confronted the creature, recognizing it as a blood golem. He considered it an ideal way to get started and sprang forward, swinging his fists to begin the assault. The force of his blow erupted with intense heat and strength. Despite the force of the strike, the golem's form remained unharmed, seamlessly taking the impact. The Butcher gripped the blood-soaked creature and wrenched its head free from its body. A local noble observed the man's remarkable display of power, yet felt puzzled about the man's intentions. Wearing a self-assured grin, the brute reached out and seized the blood golem in his grasp, using only one hand. To the astonishment of everyone watching, he flung the object a great distance across the field. A fragment of the creature slammed into the earth, landing just next to the youthful. He gave a disapproving glance, expressing his opinion that the behavior was impolite. The Butcher sneered at him, questioning whether the strength he had displayed the previous day had merely been an act meant to impress. As the ground shifted once more under his feet with the golem's awakening, the brutes appeared to sense a change. Without any sign, the young man unleashed a spell that controlled the earth, causing the ground beneath everyone to tremble violently. Right after that, he summoned a blazing sphere of fire in preparation for his upcoming attack. A tremendous burst of flames swept across the battlefield, consuming everything in its path. Iris let out a startled scream, confused by his decision to unleash two powerful spells one after another. Surrounded by fire, the brute let out a laugh, remarking on how the boy's fierce spirit shone through, no matter how he looked on the outside. With a wide grin, he announced his appreciation for that sort of confidence. In response, the butcher issued a challenge, eager to find out who among them possessed greater strength. The young man, however, could only wish he had been caught in the explosion himself. Suggested they compete to determine who could defeat the most undead, then sprang boldly into the center of the horde. Consequently, the subjugation force arrived at the mines with a lower number of losses than they had anticipated. Due to the cramped conditions, just a handful of warriors were permitted to go inside the mine. Once inside, the burly man offered compliments to the young man for his performance in the fight, but the young man responded by requesting that the brute refrain from pretending to be his friend. From afar, the mage observed the unfolding events, puzzled by the butcher's fascination with the young boy. He remembered how effortlessly this enforcer had defeated him, leaving him unconscious. At that time, recalled how he had managed to wield his own mana pressure effectively. Despite his efforts, he couldn't shake the image of those luminous eyes and the intense look that had been fixed on him. In a flash, the overwhelming force of the other's mana pinned him down, leaving him stunned by how effortlessly it happened. Based on this, he determined that while they appeared to be equals, the boy was certainly concealing something. Near the mouth of a darker tunnel, a leader informed the group that soldiers were to remain at the entrance. The chosen team assembled by the doorway, as others offered them words of encouragement and hoped for their success on the task ahead. At the vanguard, the young man observed a ranger from S team stepping forward to take charge. Displaying remarkable accuracy, she noticed the presence of an undead creature and swiftly eliminated it with an unexpected attack. She demonstrated her abilities while observing how smoothly everyone fulfilled their responsibilities. He realized how powerful working together as a team could be. Despite the group's organized movement forward, the boy remained vigilant, closely watching the road before them. Became aware of a shadowy presence radiating nearby. A sound echoed from deep within the tunnel, capturing his focus. As the group arrived at what seemed to be the mine's end, a knight raised his hand, signaling the others to halt. Before he began his survey of the surroundings, a cleric reassured the group, encouraging them to remain calm and have faith in the blessings that watched over them. Noticing the young man's uncertainty, Iris walked over to see if he was troubled. Just then, the brute emerged from behind and wondered aloud whether the young man, too, had picked up on the ominous scent of death. He conveyed that, while he was unable to identify the exact source, he sensed the presence of a formidable undead nearby. The boy agreed with the butcher's instincts, feeling that the suspicion was justified. He then told the mage to remain close and keep behind him when the fight started. When Iris heard the statement, curiosity filled her as she inquired about what was approaching. However, he merely responded with uncertainty, admitting he had no idea yet. Without warning, a glow emerged from the far end of a different corridor. Several soldiers advised caution, urging their companions not to move forward without careful thought. They walked over to Rox, curious about the source of the disturbance. The knight mentioned that during their search of the other tunnels, they had discovered a glow coming from the distant end. The light at the end of the hallway intensified. The unexpected discovery caught him off guard, as he was certain the only exit was the one through which they had originally come. Daylight poured through an unforeseen gap in the mine's roof, illuminating the darkness below. Upon arriving at the tunnel's end, the soldiers stared in disbelief at the unexpected chamber that unfolded before them. The team of explorers advanced swiftly, eager to examine the cavern they had just uncovered. In the middle of the cavern, a skeleton rested on a mound of bones, revealing that the area served as a burial place. A soldier noticed the symbol on the skeleton's chest and realized it was the royal emblem of. At that moment, Asher recalled that he was concealing his true identity and that this territory was under the control of the Duchy of. Ever since broke away from the Kingdom of, encountering traces of the former regime in this place felt unusual. Goat quickly wondered why those signs were there, suspecting that maybe the place was not what everyone believed it to be. He was determined to avoid another embarrassing mistake, so he made up his mind to conduct a thorough investigation, relying on his skill in collecting information. The butcher, on the other hand, made things straightforward by insisting that eliminating the creature would resolve the issue. Stepped forward, offering to handle the undead himself, which caught the warrior off guard with his unexpected willingness to take charge. He assured everyone that disturbing the brute was unnecessary, and insisted on taking care of the situation on his own. The sorcerer, speaking with authority, instructed the clerics to start the purification ritual. At that instant, Asher realized that the creature was a death knight, which meant it could be made weaker through purification. The skeleton stood motionless and quiet while the sacred light surrounded it. Without warning, stones began to cascade from the ceiling, halting the ritual and leaving everyone shocked and alarmed. A few moments passed before a vivid red light burst from the creature's eyes, signaling that it had come to life. Asher quickly realized that the circumstances were shifting. In an instant, the skeleton surged forward with incredible swiftness, kicking up a thick cloud of dust in its wake. The creature's bony hand shot out with alarming speed, aiming straight for Goad as he remained sprawled on the ground. The mage spun around, startled by the attack that was about to land. At the very last moment, the brute seized Goad and tossed him out of harm's way, stepping in to block the attack himself. The microphone, resembling a skeleton, shifted once more, prompting the butcher to understand that this was not a typical member of the undead. A cleric observed the creature closely and determined that it was a wailing mite rather than a death mite. The priest clarified that even though the creature had lost some of its strength, its real danger existed in another aspect. He explained that the wailing knight possessed a perilous power, allowing him to control other undead beings. With determination in their eyes, the warrior made it known that their next move had become unmistakably certain. As the staff began to emit a bright light, Asher reminded everyone that their main priority was to defeat the wailing knight. However, prior to that moment, he had declared his intention to transform the landscape was used strategically to offset the enemy's greater numbers. Iris stood in confusion, her gaze fixed on the earth as it started to tremble under everyone's feet. As the shaking grew stronger, she let out a scream and demanded to know his intentions. Meanwhile, the brute jeered at him, questioning whether he planned to take all the credit for defeating their foe. In response, Asher encouraged the group to remain calm and approach the situation with logical thinking. The group was assured that plenty of foes awaited each of them in the area below. Confident that many enemies awaited him, the butcher prepared himself for the coming battle. At the same time, the remaining members of the team found themselves battling against the shadow mages. The strategist confidently took charge, announcing his intention to focus on the main objective. Simultaneously, the brute and the clerics moved into formation, ready to confront the towering skeletons that emerged before them. In a distant part of the war-torn field, Asher moved cautiously toward his adversary. Eventually, he found himself directly confronting the infamous Wailing Knight. The Wailing Knight lifted its sword, preparing itself for the battle ahead. Without warning, the creature lunged forward with incredible speed. As the mage themselves for the oncoming assault. He summoned several blazing arrows, sending them flying straight at the skeletal knight. Fire had been selected intentionally, since the undead were particularly vulnerable to that element. Despite being surrounded by fire, the enemy does not fall. The resolve to make his upcoming attack even more powerful. He combined two spells at once, intensifying the magic he was about to unleash. A flurry of blazing arrows, each one radiating intense heat, shot forward and raced straight toward the adversary. Despite the force of the assault, the creature effortlessly stopped it with one hand, leaving everyone around in shock. Spotting an opportunity, the young man a spear of fire, aiming it straight at his target. The powerful spell shot directly into the knight's chest, hitting with a burst of energy. The assault tore a wide opening through its form, yet the skeleton remained unaffected, displaying no evidence of harm. In the blink of an eye, the adversary responded with a swift counterattack, launching its sword through the air. From this observation, the sorcerer understood that if his block was not performed skillfully, his mana shield might break apart. The monster's downward blow left him wide open, making it easy for another attack to land. As his final option, an attack that merged the force of waves with the chilling impact of winter's burst. He combined 2 spells and released a chilling glacier breath that turned the darkness to ice. Right after that, he decided that if burning it failed, he would try to destroy it using sheer strength. Concentrating his energy, he unleashed 3 earth spears at once, preparing for his next attack. The blow struck the enemy directly on the top of the head. Without warning, the creature started to emit a powerful glow, softly expressing its urge to go back. The mage stared in disbelief, witnessing the knight skillfully evade his attack. Suddenly, he realized that the creature now looked entirely different. At that moment, he sensed his composure slipping from him, just when he needed it most. When the opposition began to retreat, he understood that loss was inevitable. If the battle carried on in that manner. Just as time seemed to run out, the warrior suddenly emerged and struck the creature with a powerful blow. The fighter stood covered in blood, determined not to let anyone take what he considered his main prize. In another place, the severed head of a tumbled across the earth, evidence of its defeat. A soldier wasted no time in stomping down, breaking the skull beneath his boot. The commander acknowledged that it was efforts alone that had allowed them to make it through the battle with the 3 alive. Goad expressed his frustration to the commander about her receiving all the recognition, prompting the man to apologize and admit that Goad had played an important role as well. As the fight drew to a close, Iris raised her gaze to the sky, her mind filled with concern about the safety of the others. Swiftly reassured her, urging her to ignore the other people and concentrate on escaping. As Roop gazed at the opening above, it became clear to her that any hope of escaping had vanished. If the failed, everyone's fate would be sealed. Without warning, the earth trembled beneath their feet, sending shockwaves of surprise through the group. The ground beneath them began to give way, shifting and breaking apart as they stood. Above ground, the warrior rushed toward the crying knight, initiating their fierce confrontation. Energy swirled around his clenched fists as he drew back his arm, readying himself to deliver a powerful blow. A barrage of swift punches struck the creature's body as he attacked with relentless speed. Despite the fighter's struggle, the darkness fought back, reaching out with a bony hand to seize the fighter's face. Right after, the creature swiftly retrieved its sword from where it had dropped. High above, a radiant glow began to fall toward them. In an instant, the burst of light hit the creature head-on. Clutching an axe, the brute unleashed a powerful kick that sent the weapon flying out of reach. At the base of the pit, the group looked upward, realizing that their 2 friends were standing side by side, battling together above them. The towering man jeered at the mage, a mocking grin stretching across his face as he questioned how the mage could possibly remain standing. He instructed him to concentrate, as the other observed that, although the creature was irritatingly tough, it made the fight more entertaining. The strategist explained the plan, telling his partner to serve as bait so he could set up the perfect attack. Trusting the strategist's judgment, the partner promised to give it his all. According to the strategy, the warrior sprang upward, soaring until he hovered right above the knight. With a powerful blow, he descended and smashed into the ground, leaving behind a huge crater where he landed. He delivered a powerful kick that broke the enemy's skull into countless pieces. Within moments, the creature's form reassembled itself completely from the scattered fragments. The skeleton raised its bony arms, causing several minions to emerge from the earth and seize the fighter, holding them tightly in place. The mage unleashed a powerful burst of magic, causing every skeleton in the vicinity to crumble into dust, all in an effort to help him. The massive man noticed an opportunity and seized the knight's face in his large hand. He forcefully brought it down against the floor of the cavern in one quick, powerful movement. Without warning, someone called out, urging him to move aside, which made him jump in surprise. They released a tremendous burst of flames that swept across the surroundings, causing his partner to mutter angrily in response. Hidden behind the burning fire, the brute noticed the creature's sword slicing toward him. He reacted at once, using his knee and elbows to protect himself. As he lifted his gaze, he noticed that the adversary had begun charging straight at the mage. Directly in front of him, the knight cried out in anguish, stretching out his hand in an attempt to capture him. Having no other options, he simply observed helplessly while the monster drew nearer. Without warning, the necklace he wore for protection began to glow and emit a faint energy. An automatic barrier formed from mana sprang up, shielding him from harm. The creature collided with him directly, sending him crashing to the ground with tremendous force. At that instant, he remembered the mayor's caution regarding eating mana. However, he was relieved to notice that he experienced no negative effects. Despite everything, he became aware that his remaining strength was almost gone. His shoulder had been knocked out of place by the most recent strike. Even so, larger challenges continued to hang over him. Soon, a suit of dark armor surrounded the knight, greatly increasing his strength. Without hesitation, the clerics entered the fray and unleashed radiant chains designed to hold the creature in place. Someone observed that this type of armor was unprecedented, noting that even the church's extensive records contained no mention of it. The brute seized the opportunity and called out to the priests, urging them to stand firm. The beast seized the chains and dragged the clerics closer with such tremendous strength that everyone watching was stunned. The giant man let out a thunderous roar as he seized his companions, determined not to let them be swept away. He demanded to know whether they truly intended to throw their lives away. He instructed his team to get ready to capture the adversary again. Noticing a chance to act, the bard his magic, aiming to defeat the wailing knight through the power of his music. Fueled by a desire to demonstrate his abilities, he launched a spear made of earth toward the beast. The skeleton moved swiftly to avoid the attack, then responded with a lightning-fast counterstrike. The strike connected with the young man's neck. Upon witnessing their companions being attacked, both the brute and a mage who had recently become a cleric received urgent instructions to tend to his wounds without delay. Before long, the enemy summoned a glowing sphere of power, prompting the warriors to move ahead in order to block its path. He successfully held back the force with a firm block, as his companion observed from a safe distance behind him. The massive fighter spun around, fixing his gaze on the mage and insisting on knowing the length of his weight. He explained that he was waiting to unleash a powerful attack, then wondered how much time he needed for his mana to fully recharge. Holding his staff firmly, he assured them that he would need just a matter of seconds. The brute flashed a wicked smile in response, then let out a thunderous roar as he lunged toward the crying knight. At the same time, he signaled for his companion to prepare for action. The beast steadied itself, ready to face the warrior's fierce attack. The fighter loudly announced his intention to strike with force. They struck the weak spot with force, and instructed the mage to focus his spells on that exact location. A split second later, a powerful fist slammed into his chest with overwhelming force. Despite the increasing force of the strike, the brute insisted that the dead should stay motionless. With overwhelming strength, his fist punched straight through the Manx's body, ripping it apart. The beast's protective shell broke apart, exposing a gaping wound in its chest. From a distance, the mage carefully watched the aftermath of the attack. It became clear that their strategy had succeeded. Still, there was a possibility that the wailing would continue. The creature formed an arm and delivered a powerful strike that sent the warrior reeling. The creature lifted its hand, energy crackling around it as it prepared to deliver a final blow to the wounded companion lying on the ground. The sprang between the brute and its target, blocking the attack and making it clear through his actions that he intended to face the creature himself. He soon realized that the wound in the creature's chest remained open. He understood that channeling his magic toward that precise area would lead him to triumph. Fueled by confidence in his ability to win, he evaded the creature's strike by unleashing a sudden, blazing surge of energy. Without warning, he spun around and noticed a band of adventurers moving toward him from the rear. He immediately noticed his apprentice getting ready to cast a spell, her staff firmly in hand. The mage recalled mentioning to the young woman that, even though she hadn't practiced much, her natural ability for ice magic surpassed her skills in other areas. She had given her word that she would try her hardest to avoid causing him embarrassment, and he had acknowledged her dedication with words of praise. In the present moment, a fierce burst of magical flames hit the wailing knight directly. Seizing the opportunity, the tightened his fists, brimming with energy, and confidently proclaimed that their victory was assured. The speaker greeted the audience, asking if they found the story enjoyable and expressed personal enjoyment of it. Viewers were encouraged to subscribe to the channel and show their support with a like to stay updated for the next part. The narrator bid farewell to the audience, promising to return in the next story.